Okay, everyone, you're all gonna rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is to the back of the room.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. The Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its meeting held on January 7, 2014. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Herald News, the Township of Verona, and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted in each of Verona's 6 schools, the board office, and town hall. This posting was also sent to the above newspapers, all SCA presidents, and SCA liaisons. The Verona Board of Education operates under consent agenda format. Any board member has a right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public present. Mr. Spartel?
Here.
Mr. Gay?
Aye.
Mr. Bellino?
Here.
Mr. Yunus?
Present.
Mr. Quattrochi?
Here. Okay, we have a presentation from students at Brookdale tonight, but before we do that, do we have any comment or question on any agenda item? All right, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Rampoli.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight with some of my friends from Brookdale. Before we start this part of the presentation, a couple of things I just wanted to share with you. Recently, Brookdale Avenue School concluded our Spirit Week before the break, the April break, and we do that to raise money for New Jersey Leukemia and Lymphoma. And we had a lot of fun with it, and we raised over $440. I was very proud of Brookdale families for that. And last week, Senorita Witter had a very successful Spanish program, her Fiesta Fantastica, and that was a great opportunity for students to share what they had been learning in Spanish class. And Mrs. Chivas was instrumental for the success of that program by helping out with practices, rehearsals, and playing the piano with us. I also had the opportunity to stop by the Team Zoe event at H.B. Whitehorn School last Friday. Tremendous turnout, a lot of fun. A number of my friends here tonight were at that, and I found out that they raised over $2,700 for progeria research. So a little update on some things that were happening recently. Tonight we're here because we want to celebrate Poetry Month. And you may not have known that April is Poetry Month, but I bet you didn't know that Thursday, April 24th was Poem in Your Pocket Day. And we celebrated that at Brookdale. We had a lot of fun with that. It's a national, it's been celebrated nationwide since 2008. And each year schools, workplaces, and parks share readings of poems that people actually do pull from their pockets. So on that day, we were carrying around poems in our pockets, and if someone asked you to share their poem, you would share it with them, and they would share theirs with you. The idea is very simple. Select a poem you love, or even better, write your own poem, and we do have a couple of original poems to share tonight, and then carry it with you on Poem in Your Pocket Day, but you have to be ready to share it with others throughout the day. Tonight, some of my friends from Brookdale in 1st and 4th grade would like to share their poems with you. From 1st grade, let me call up first Ella Scipione and Ryan Gray. And they're in their PJs for a special reason, but I'll let them tell you. Ella and Ryan, come on up, please. Ella and Ryan are in Mrs. Sorigliano's 1st grade class. We're going to do ladies first. Ella. And Ryan, you can over here on me.
The Sandman by Evelyn Stone. The Sandman, hark, I hear him. He's coming up the stair, and everybody near him is gnawing at a clay. He's peeping in the door now, and first of all he spies, as he has done before now, the little children's eyes. And quickly does he throw it, his golden sleepy sand, and all before they know it are off to sleep again. twinkle, author unknown. Stars, they sparkle overhead. Night is clear, I'm tucked in bed, gazing out my window at a flickering display. Diamonds scatter way up high, brightly shining in blackest sky. Tiny lights will twinkle until night turns into day.
Ryan, tell us, why are you and Ella in your pajamas? Speak into the microphone.
Because when we come home, I want to go straight to bed.
And these poems have to do with going to sleep. Thank you, friends. Good job. From Mrs. Gordon's first grade class, Olivia Cusimano and Landon Leroux.
Boa constrictor, I shall silver steam. Oh, I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor, a boa constrictor, a boa constrictor. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor and I don't like it one bit. Well, what do you know? It's moving my toe. Oh, gee, it's up to my knee. Oh, my, it's up to my thigh. Oh, fiddle, it's up to my middle. Oh, heck, it's up to my neck. Oh, dread, it's up. Jump or jiggle, frogs jump, caterpillars hop, worms wiggle, bugs jiggle, rabbits hop, horses quack, snakes slide, seagulls glide, mice creep through a leaf, puppies pounce, kittens pounce, lions stalk the eye walk.
There are many reasons to read and share poetry. One reason is that poetry invites us to use our imagination. Now I'd like to invite my second grade friends Carly Holland and Riley Ying.
My Loose Tooth by Ruth Cowan. I had a loose tooth, a wiggly jiggly loose tooth. I had a loose tooth hanging by a thread. So I pulled my loose tooth, this wiggly loose tooth, and put it beneath my pillow when I went up to bed. The fairies took my loose tooth, my wiggly jiggly loose tooth, so now I have a nickel and a hole in my head. What if by Shel Silverstein. Last night while I lay thinking down, some what ifs called inside my ear, and pranced and partied all night long, and sang the same old what if song. What if I'm dumb in school? What if they close the swimming pool? What if I get beat up? What if there's poison in my cup? What if I start to cry? What if I get sick and die? What if I flunk that test? What if green hair grows on my chest? What if nobody likes me? What if a bolt of lightning strikes me? What if I don't go taller? What if my head starts getting smaller? What if the fish will bite? What if the wind tears up my kite? What if they start a war? What if my parents get divorced? What if the bus is late? What if my teeth don't grow in straight? What if I tear my pants? What if I never learn to dance? Everything seems swell, and then in daytime what if strike again?
Another reason that we study poetry is that it strengthens both our reading and writing skills. And now I'd like to invite my third grade friends up, Tiger Lily Fisher, Kimmy Horton, and Kaimana Vogel.
Fisher. The man I've never seen walked down the aisle, soft and clean, not a noise at all, not a run or a fall, when the man I've never seen is here. He wears a hoodie when he bumps into somebody he never cares. He never runs, he just breathes on his lungs, he talks in a low voice and walks very slow. Nobody ever knew his purpose, do you?
I want a younger brother by unknown. I want a younger brother, someone for me to tease, someone for me to boss around and order as you please, someone for me to wake up every morning with a shout, someone who will make my bed and take the garbage out, someone to keep my kitten fed and clean the litter box, someone to torture just for fun and swim with socks. Yes, I want a younger brother, but I hope that he won't be another stubborn and rebellious little rascal just like me.
Fireworks by Kimberly. Boom. Fireworks are like a rocket going up to the sky and suddenly exploding in the sky with a twinkle like a star as it is winking at me.
Another reason to enjoy poetry is because it helps us explore our feelings. My fourth grade friends, Emma and Lucy Hogan and John Rosinski, come on up, please.
If you don't read this poem real soon, I'll make you eat a rotten prune. And if you stop just halfway through, I'll pinch you till your face turns blue. Don't even think to finish here or else I'll have to pull your ear. But if you read to the end, I promise that I'll be your friend. Poet's Tree by Silverstein. Underneath the poetry, come and rest a while with me, and watch the way the world web weaves between the shady story leaves, the branches of the poetry reaching from the mountain to sea. So come and dream, or come and climb, just don't get hit by falling rhymes.
Snowball by Shel Silverstein. I made myself a snowball as perfect as could be. I thought I'd keep it as a pet and let it sleep with me. I made it some pajamas and a pillow for its head. Then last night it ran away, but first it wet the bed.
Shel Silverstein happens to be a favorite, and probably a favorite of yours as well. Another reason we study poetry is because it invites us to feel its rhythm and its music, its sounds and its beats. Thank you, friends, for coming tonight. I have a poem that I'd like to share that I found. It's called Pass the Poems, Please by Jane Basquill. Pass the poems, please, pile them on my plate. Put them right in front of me, for I can hardly wait to take each tangy word, to try each tasty rhyme. And when I've tried them once or twice, I'll try them one more time. So pass the poems, please. They just won't leave my head. I have to have more poems before I go to bed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rapolo. Thanks, kids. You did a great job, the teachers. The boa constrictor one's a little scary. But, I think I'll be all right. But thanks again.
Even those without pajamas can get back home.
public.
That looks good. That's perfect, right?
We can actually read off the laptop.
You know what, Cheryl, if you don't stay here, you don't get to the mic, you don't get on TV. So I guess we have to stay here. Okay, so this is our budget time of year, and we have to have a public hearing, which is tonight. So the Board of Education has already approved the tentative budget, and tonight on the agenda for approval is the final budget for the school year 2014-15. A little overview of what we're going to talk about, a little bit about the timeline, how this applies to our strategic plan, what things drive the budget costs, constraints, breakdown, and some comparative data from what we call our comp group, which we like to explain is every I-factor school district in northern New Jersey that has between 1,800 and 3,500. We've made a couple exceptions on the 1,800 because a few of our local comp group schools went down below 1,800, so we decided to keep them in. And they're also all in northern New Jersey, so we don't try to compare ourselves to southern New Jersey. They have to meet those criteria that we just said. So here's our timeline. The budget process starts in November, where we start looking at things that we need to add into the budget. Then we build our budget, submit it to the superintendent for review. The Board of Education Finance team looks at it, and we have public work sessions. We adopt the preliminary budget, and then tonight we do the final budget approval. We will also have some other public presentations on the budget to inform stakeholders. So, action item number 1 from the new 5-year strategic plan says to secure adequate financial resources. So part of that is to develop a sustainable financial plan, find alternative sources, identify some partnerships, work with our employees on trying to reduce costs, mostly in healthcare, and also to establish a communication plan to better inform the stakeholders of this plan. Here are some of the things that this budget buys. We have some new staff in the middle school, a basic skills program in the elementary school, another technology person in the district. With the passage of the referendum and the improvements in the technology infrastructure come along some requirements to have additional personnel to deal with the new technology we're going to have. It also maintains the current system of building principals in each school and nurses in each building and the neighborhood school concept. We also will be working on some curriculum improvements K-12, continuing the professional development program, some new STEM initiatives, and it also includes money to repair the track at the middle school that has really been a problem for the last couple of years. Some supplies and professional development, things like that. We have new textbooks for language arts in the middle school, reading and writing workshop materials. There's a new Syracuse University dual enrollment classes for next year that will need some professional development and some materials. We have a new AP course called Environmental Science next year, and our teachers will attend the Columbia University Reading Workshop, and we will also look to purchase or actually lease some new devices. Here's the budget drivers. And we have our business administrator, Cheryl Nardino, to come up to explain the rest of this stuff.
Okay, the budget is driven mostly by mandates set forth by the state, which are standards and regulations that are passed by law including special education costs. A majority of the budget funds staff salaries and benefits, and in that are also mandated taxes and costs that the board must fund. The healthcare continues to rise at usually a rate between 8 and 10% every year. Last year was the first year that the teachers started contributing to their benefits per state legislation. So although the benefits are increasing still by the 8 to 10%, we are getting deductions from the employees towards those premium costs. Discretionary, again, is under constant pressure because if things change in the budget within the budget year, there are times where we have to freeze the budget. Enrollment is up approximately almost 7% over the last 7 years, and again, enrollment drives what our salaries and benefits are going to be so that we can have teachers in front of the students. The budget constraints that we have are that the tax levy for a school budget is capped by state legislation. So it used to be where the budget, there was a budget cap on the total budget. It's now capped at 2% on the tax levy, so it makes it very difficult to budget for the things that we need. So what they have done though with that bank cap is they've given you scenarios where you can increase your tax levy beyond the 2%. So this year the board has elected to use $165,000 of that bank cap, and that makes roughly $363,000 available for the next budget year of 15-16. So the net result in the tax levy increase is 2.58. The next slide is the proposed expenditures for 14-15. So that number is just for the general fund is $30,992,356. And then you'll see in this slide how we break it down between these four departments and how much that budget is within those departments. And if you turn to the next page, we just expand that salary and benefit line to show you how much each of those departments are within this budget. We also show in this slide what the 1-year change is and then what the 5-year historical change is. So you can see there that the actual budget increase is 2.76%, and the difference between that and the tax levy increase is we got about $42,000 additional state aid from the state. And also, we appropriated a little bit more money for tax relief. The next slide are a summary of the benefit costs. The mandated benefits are the Social Security taxes that we have to pay on employee salaries, and then there's unemployment and workers' compensation benefits that we have to pay. The bottom section, which is the actual health care and benefits to the teachers. So that first one, the health care premium line, has actually been going down for 2 reasons. One is that there are more staff members that are opting out since they have to contribute towards their benefits. So from this current budget year 12-13 to budget year 13-14, there was an increase of 12 staff members that opted out. Now that happened at the end of the budget year, so that we didn't see that savings in this current year's budget until, or in what we budgeted for the tax levy, until it actually happened come the end of June. That's when people start letting me know that they want to opt out. So the other thing is again, the employee contribution. So next year is going to be tier 3 or year 3 of a 4-year contribution schedule. And what was budgeted last year was $200,000, and because now next year is year 3, that number grows to $600,000. We have projected that in year 4 it's be on the upwards of $800,000. And then the last line of that is the tuition reimbursement and sick day payments for teachers. The next slide is a description of what the non-discretionary and discretionary spending is. So the previous slides talked about what the dollar amount was in those areas, but this kind of breaks down for everybody what those things are when we talk about discretionary and non-discretionary. So I won't read through all of them, but. Next slide is on the district budgeted revenue. And you can see the largest number there is the local taxes that the property owner pays towards the tax levy for the school budget. And then you see the very small percentage that we get from state aid. Extraordinary aid is aid that we get for special education children for costs in excess of $40,000. Tax relief actually comes from the current year budget, whatever amount is over 2% of the total expenditures, that has to go back to the taxpayer for tax relief. We also collect tuition from 3 different sources. One are the regular education students in grade levels K through 12. We run the preschool program, and then we also collect some tuition from special education students we take in from other school districts. And then miscellaneous revenue are the rents that we charge, those who like to rent out our facilities, such as the Chinese school. There are organizations that will rent out the fields in the summer, the gyms in the summertime, the YMCA program. Executive Kids is now a new company that's renting out a couple classrooms at Brookdale. So those are all miscellaneous revenue drivers. And the next slide, we get back to enrollment. So, Mr. Fitz, I don't know if you want to take it from here.
Thanks. So our enrollment has increased over the last 7 years by about 6.7%. This is that comp district group that I spoke to you about, from Berkeley Heights down to Verona there. They're mostly districts that are local to us. It explains exactly what we mean by this. And by the way, this will be posted on the website tomorrow. We'll have this up. Here's a property tax data for 2013. This is that same comp group, as you see how the different towns in this area, how they compare to us in the tax levy. And the highlights of spending, of comparative spending. This is not so good here. Yeah. Wow. We have to fix the font. This slide is basically the per pupil costs. So out of this comp group of 12 different districts, in total spending per pupil, Verona ranks 12th. We will definitely have this. It's a matter of font and bringing the background up. Sorry about that. It didn't look like this on the computer, so we're gonna have to make some changes to that tomorrow. We'll put it up on the website. This is our administrative and buildings and grounds comparison data with the group. We had a couple of did you knows. Again, we are still always looking to increase external revenue. The way I explain it is money coming into the district other than taxes or from state aid. Ms. Nardino spoke to you about a few things. I mean, we also we have an advertising program, and we also offer corporate sponsorships. We have a few corporate sponsorships to fund some new programs that we offer. And we're always looking for ways to make it more efficient. So one of the things we're looking at is that we did an online auction for our electricity last year. Now we're going to do another online auction for our gas. So we feel pretty confident we'll bring some of that down. So just to summarize, this budget represents a 2.5% increase on the tax levy. We maintain our existing programs. It's going to fund enhancements and additional staff. Has great value and supports the strategic goals that we've put in place as a community. And it creates new classes for Verona Middle School students. who, it's going to create another new class to get another piece of that autistic program that we've had in Verona for a few years, where we only offered a pre-K1, pre-KK1 program. 2 years ago, we started this is about 4 years ago, we started the second level one, where you pretty much span from grades 1 to 3. Now we have 4 through right now 4 through 6 covered. So rather than sending the kids out of district, we are able to offer the program in our school, which does two things, obviously. One is it helps us keep the kids that belong in our schools in the schools, and it does actually save the district money as compared to sending them out of district. And we also add some needed revenue to the staff, the technology, and the buildings and grounds department. Sorry about that, I forgot to do that. So now here's my slide. Questions, board members?
I have a question, Steve.
Sure.
On slide 6, that's really more for Cheryl now. Slide 6. You have, benefits include $1 million in mandated taxes and costs. What is that? What are mandated taxes and costs? And the benefit is what,
Those are,
25% of our benefit.
Social security benefits, pension, unemployment, workers' comp.
The detail for that is on page 10. So what it does is it breaks down the total benefits line into all benefits. So the benefits line on the main chart is 4.69 million.
Yeah, I don't see the million, so I was asking about $1 million in mandated costs.
That's the top of page 10. Social Security and state pensions is 817,000.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right.
So state pension, I thought, what do we contribute for state pensions? I thought that was we don't contribute to pensions.
Well, we do in that, we get a pension bill from the state every year for funding the back pension.
So that's going to waffle around. They did a waiver for a while, and then they did away with that. They said you have to start paying it back.
Well, it's for certain pensioners. The teachers, certified staff, and members of the teachers' pension and annuity fund is funded by the state. Those not in that particular pension fund, which is called Public Employees Retirement Fund, custodians, secretaries, non-certificated staff, those employees, their pensions are not funded by the state. They're funded by the district and the employee. There was a time when the state was contributing that, as Mr. Fauci says, a few years ago, they were helping us fund that because they had extra money. So they had no more extra money. In fact, we had like, I don't know, $800 million deficit this year. So those pensions are run by the employee and the employer.
We also have,
That's new though? Or?
no, that's been since the dawn of time. It just,
I mean, the pension, when did that pension change? You just mentioned it a few years ago.
well, a number of years ago, when the state was flush with cash, they were helping to contribute to that fund. And it's a plant that the district's portion of it. But when they ran out of money, they said, okay, now it's back on your doorstep again.
So out of the 800,000, how much is the pension contribution? How much is Social Security?
Social Security is about 70,000, and then pension is the rest.
we also have this other,
I don't remember.
there's another pension we have to pay into, the Essex County one, right? Charlton,
It's a very old pension system, and there are retirees that are still in that system, so you pay until they pass.
Okay. And my other question is, you have healthcare costs, stress the budget, 8.9% increase. That 8.9, is that on an equalized basis? I know, because the actual healthcare costs are going down.
Right, that's, that 8.9% is the increase in premium. The actual premium cost for each one of the plans, family, Illinois, single.
Right, so if we didn't make a change to the plan, that, or the number of participants, then the premium increase would, or the total benefit cost would have gone up by 8.9%.
Right.
Not the total benefit, the total benefit line on that.
No, just the healthcare contribution to the benefit.
The healthcare, yeah, right, so that 3.6 million of healthcare one is a result of having gone up 8.9%. But netted down on then we back out of that, there's the incentive, I'm sorry, not the incentive, there's a public employee contribution. So the net effect is,
Right.
all that stuff.
So, like, at some point, you can't keep changing the benefit plan, right? So, how close are we to where now we're gonna see an increase in those costs next year, or in this subsequent year? We saw a decrease this year in the total benefit line,
Well,
right, a decrease.
we saw the decrease because of the difference between the tier level that the teachers were at. So,
So this reflects that the people contributing to these
that's
costs.
right, that's right.
Okay, so we'll see,
One more year, right? One more year of gross?
There's 4 tiers, and next year will be tier 3, so it'll peak in 2 more years, next year and the year after. Well, actually, the salaries will be adjusted, so it'll be it'll be a percentage of the salary. So it'll continue to go up, because the big increases are going through the tiers 1 through 4, they're phasing it in. So the big increases go from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Tier 4 for us caps out in 2 years, but then it'll be adjusted only by the cost of the salary increases, the time for pension, the percentage.
so
next year-
$600,000
So-
is what they're contributing.
What they will contribute in the budget that's reflected here. So the
Right.
budget, the 2014-15 budget is about 600,000, 609,000, something like that.
What was it last year? What is that in,
So this has been, this year is the biggest increase in the schedule.
from what to 600?
That should be 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it went from about 300 last year to 600 this year. The forecast is that next year, it'll go to 850.
From 600 to 800.
Correct. And then it flatlines at that point.
Right, so it's not, it'll totally flat because it'll adjust to the salary, but it will be no gigantic increase.
Right, so what I mean by flat, the schedule stays,
That's
right? And then the contribution is a function of, in a band of salary, so if you make between 50 and 60K a year, right, that there's a percentage that you pay up for premium. So as premium increases, you will pay more. As an
Right. So next year, if the 9% increase is about $260,000, that will be offset
by the increase for next year.
The increase in the contribution.
Yeah, right.
So
Then the year after that, the big number will be back.
It'll be back. That was my question. So in 2 years, we're looking at another big number.
Correct.
Big increase from healthcare.
Correct. But one of the things that we have talked to the Teachers Association about is to be conscious of how much they're contributing, and that what they're contributing is a function of the premium. So that now the incentive is help lower the premium, maybe with alternate plans, et cetera. So I think we can still shape the healthcare plan to get some savings. Because you'll be paying less out of your paycheck if you help lower the premium, right?
So it just looks, if you, on the summary page where you have, looks like these increase in salaries and benefits continue to cannibalize the stuff that we buy discretionary. And it's only growing, it's not growing, although 5-year compound growth is 0.4%.
It's flat. It's less than inflation.
So just to piggyback on that, Steve, so like I said in the presentation, that we got an increase in opt-outs from 12, 13, 13, 14,
Yeah,
12 people.
that's
So
another thing that helps.
we are probably going to see the opt-out number go up. That's what I suspect, because people are going to be paying more and more towards the benefits. So if
So
they're,
the opt-out number
Yeah,
is
it's
magnified savings because the
Yeah.
whole premium.
It makes the opt-out more attractive if they have to contribute.
Right, but that, what Ms. Nardino's saying is that the healthcare premium cost, the premium increase rate was 8.9 for as many people as you have in the plan, right? What she's commenting on is that a number of people have dropped out of the plan.
Mhm.
So the premium goes from whatever it was to zero for each people. So that's blended into that 1.62 as well.
Because a few years ago, they were contributing based on some percentage of their salary, and now it's a percentage of
It
the
started at a percentage of salary, and then as you follow the schedule across, it becomes a percentage of premium, and the percentage that you pay is pegged to salary ranges.
Right.
The more you make, the higher percentage you pay of whatever the premium is.
Right.
If you opt out.
So if you opted out, did you still have to contribute the 2% of your salary? No. So so if you opted out, you contributed nothing to that.
It's a win on both sides, because we eliminate paying the premium for that family or person, and plus they don't contribute.
It started as a percent of premium, and is now jumping to a percent of salary. That's why we'll.
No, it's
No,
all
the
percent
other
of
way
the other way around.
No, it's not. Percent of salary.
Yeah, percent of.
Percent of salary. That's why we'll continue to grow afterwards. It's percent of salary.
I bet you a beer, but we're at a board meeting on
It was
Coca-Cola
1.5 of salary
when it started.
when it started, and then now everybody's on the chart.
The
There's a
percentage that you
range.
pay is ranged on the salary. So if you make, you have to look and say, what do I make? I make between 50 and 60K, for example, and then it becomes a percentage of what the premium cost is. That was a big change after the first year.
Percentage of the premium is scaled based on what your salary is.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you make over 100K,
It's indexed.
correct. If you make over 100K, you'll pay 35%.
I'm going to disagree with that.
All right.
All right. We'll report back later, but I'm going to disagree with that.
You have, well,
I have the chart right
here's the
here.
chart.
What's that?
If you're within a salary range, like for example, if you're single and you're in the salary range between 40 and 45,000, if this is year 2, you're paying 6% towards that single premium,
Percent of what?
of the premium.
6% of the premium?
That's the state chart. It started as a percentage of salary and then it changed after the first year.
Seems to me it's the higher if it's a percent of salary as opposed to a percent of premium.
No.
Percentage of, it's much, it's only one and a half.
6% of premium is $25,000, percent of salary is $80,000.
Right, so what they did is they said, when they started it was 1.5% of salary, but now it goes to 35% of premium.
Much more. We put those
When I was still on the board, I remember when they introduced it, it was a percent of the salary, and I think it was only 1.5% of the salary. But then they changed it to a percent of premium, but it's a much higher percentage of the premium.
It'll continue to grow, I think, our staff needs to index.
You want to see it?
No.
I just actually emailed it to you, Steve, before we started going back and forth about it.
Me?
Yeah, because I just sent it to you. It's a PDF. But, so in the first year, what you actually had to do was you had to compare what 1.5% of salary was and what the percentage was premium.
So
Percentage of premium. So it was always what was higher. And now the shift happens in year 2, where the percentage of premium is actually higher than the percentage of salary. And then next year, it's like another third of people in year 3.
Percent of premium.
Well, because the family premiums are,
It's not-
$45,000.
Yeah, but percent of salary, the person making $50,000, $60,000.
It's the formula that they apply it's a constant 1.5% of salary or 35% of the premium. And that number is always larger than the first one.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So, and to just give people an example, in year 4, say for family coverage, if somebody's making, say, between 70 and 75,000, they're going to be paying 16.5% premium. It's a big number.
In terms of our budget, eventually it catches up. And the premium takes over.
We have one more budget cycle after this, and then we'll catch
So
up.
that was really the genesis of it.
I have a quick question about the budget drivers, just a quick and easy question. Enrollment being up 6.7% over 7 years, are we using that as a budget driver for staffing, projecting that it's going to be 6.7% moving forward?
Pretty much everything, too.
No,
Well,
no.
it's not a direct correlation. That's what you're asking.
But the 6.7 is the historical, like it's in the last number of years, not the coming years.
6.7%.
Yeah, so every time you have a class that in the elementary grades that is past X number of students, it's another teacher, right?
So is enrollment going back down?
There was a little dip, but it's pretty flat this year.
So I know it's right, it's down.
There was a little dip last year, I think we took the time to tiny increase this year back up.
So it looks like it's trending, especially if you look
It's
at
trending up, and then it started going down a little bit, and then went back up.
Based on this graph, tomorrow we make predictions of it going back down. It looks like a bubble of population. And it was
It looks like it went up, it peaked, and now it's kind of flat. Like it went down a little bit, but it's kind of flat.
No, I know, the trend, and so what's going to be next? I would just.
We didn't do like a demographer's trend, like in other words, how like live births coming in, back a few years, we didn't do that. But, there's a bubble, there's another bubble right now, and there's two bubbles actually, 6th and 7th grade. So that are big classes. Over 200, whereas our normal is somewhere like 170.
That's in, that's in.
I didn't put it by grade.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
but those grades are in these numbers.
Right.
All right, we do committee reports. The first committee is education. Well, we had a very brief meeting. We want to touch on the radio as part of your update. We'll do that as part of superintendent's update. Buildings and grounds?
We didn't have a meeting. If you have any questions, I can give you an update on the project, or we can wait till next meeting. We did not have a meeting.
Okay. Is there anything relevant update that's worth mentioning?
Not really, we're just waiting for at least the engineering contracts are I think the most important thing to button up. So we were supposed to do it, we're doing tonight. So those contracts are all fully negotiated and.
What's
the
the
lawyers
The
sign off?
F&P is okay, that went out, I signed that went out. And now we're just doing the filing tonight.
We're approving that tonight. Okay, so and the attorneys got their review and the engineering firms agreed.
Yes.
So, and then the F&P is doing their survey this week, topographical survey for the site and the fields.
Finance?
Finance met to discuss the budget. The budget has been presented.
It's a presentation.
Anything really to report. Other than that, we are still waiting for a projection on the closing out of the current year. We still don't have that yet in terms of where we stand in relation to the current year's budget and whether there will be any funds available for the year. Mr. Nardino said that we hopefully will have that by the next committee meeting, which will be before the next board meeting. So we should have something by early part of May, which is generally about the time of the year when you get a pretty good feel and firm idea as to where you're going to end up. So that's about it.
Ms. Martina, you want to read we have the results, we sold the bonds today, so we got our interest rate in terms, so.
Okay, so we went out to the market today on a online auction for the bond sale. There were 7 companies that were bidding on our bonds, and there were 28 bids. The lowest rate that we got, which was awarded to them today, was Roosevelt and Cross, and that percentage rate is 3.0395%. So the financial advisors, about a month and a half ago, had estimated that to be 3.65%, so that was a really good rate. In terms of the tax impact, that changes the impact to the homeowner from what we had estimated when Mr. Forte was giving his referendum presentations. That estimate was $176.75. With the bond sale today, the impact to the taxpayer is $167.79 on an average assessment of $359,000. So that's it. So the bid was awarded today. I signed off on the documentation, and the bond proceeds we should have on May 15th. So after that, we should be able to start paying bills. Now, one things that we can do is we can reimburse the general fund, our current budget, for the expenditures that we paid for because of this referendum. So that goes back to costs in 12-13 when we were paying French and Brillo and Mylan Architects to do some design work and some studies. So the total amount paid to date is $167,000. So we can write a check from the bond account back to the general fund, which then will incorporate into my projection for the end of the year where we can designate money to capital reserve or maintenance reserve. And that's a resolution that we always do at the end of June.
And where's the track repair, and where would that be?
Well, we discussed this in fine, so Mr. Bruno, I don't know if you want to.
We discussed perhaps taking it out of this year's budget if the projection allows us to do that. So right now, that's the plan, is to take it out of current year's budget.
So we told Mr. McDevitt that that's a go. So he's going to start working on getting proposals.
So he has the green light to
Yeah.
get proposals, and then if it comes within, if proposals come within the expected budget, we can move forward and resurface the track. I mean, we'll defer the drainage fix until
No,
that is that way.
the drainage fix will happen at the same time. In fact, we've been reading emails between him and MKA about the fact that we're going to address the drainage at the same time. And that was a stipulation from them, is that they didn't want to pay for the service if we were going to do anything about the drainage.
So I think that's prudent.
So,
Just one last thing on the bond sale, just for the public, the bidding started at just about 3.89%. And then by the time it was done, less than a half hour later, it was, the final bid was what we got, which is the 3.039, 3.04. So a very big range that went in our favor. All right, we went, post finance, anything else on finance?
No, I think you want those public committees.
Well, we have on the agenda the ad hoc referendum committee
Yeah.
reports, so we could do those. Yeah, so I had, so the two that I could talk to, one is the band committee report. The band committee met once, we did a walkthrough, and all, we submitted the notes, there were about 4 or 5 add-on items about the interior of the room and outfitting the room for fit for purpose, sort of descriptions and all, and storage, was basically what that had to. So Mr. Cesar wrote up the report and sent that in to Mr. McDevitt, and of course, Mr. Lynch was part of that committee. And the other committee is the technology committee. We met a couple of times already. We just met this afternoon here at the high school, and that committee is charged with the network devices and bandwidth and storage, and the rest of our connectivity. That committee is in the evaluation of vendor stages. So Mrs. Costanza is evaluating, there's about 4 or 5 different vendors. There's another one that's going to come in to take a look at what has been done in the conceptual phase of the design, if there's anything that they will recommend changing to make it a better set of solutions, and then from there, we'll zero in on one vendor of choice for the backup, and then get into the pricing and the next stages.
Do they recommend hiring a consultant, like a separate consultant?
Yeah, we talked about that tonight. So there's a recommendation, they're interviewing, I think, 3 different candidates to help project manage the installation in the project.
Okay, so they're recommending that you use that, means not to figure out who to use?
Yeah, and they're not affiliated with any of the vendors.
Right, that's okay.
I'll speak for the security committee. We met, I think this is the third time we met. And part of what the committee was doing was doing walkthroughs through the facilities, through the various schools, to verify placement of cots, door access, entry points, and the proximity meters, and looking at various ways to maximize the vestibules that we put in place and the door accesses that we're going to work on. So Paul did everything, Mr. President, and the team and the committee are working through the process to make sure we do it very cost-effective way. We actually found some cameras that would be less than what is projected in the referendum. So hopefully that will allow us to really buy some additional cameras to provide additional security for the schools. That's it,
The field committee met one time. Mr. Parisian, the athletic director, met with his coaches prior to the actual committee meeting and got their input regarding the layout of the field. He presented that to the committee. It's needs some further discussion, frankly, but it has been presented, and we're at a point where we're waiting for maybe a final decision on what the layouts will be. And that's about all I can say.
Yeah, we received some further paperwork in the past tonight and week, so we're going to be reviewing that with Mr. Parisian as well, and then continuing to schedule the next meeting, which I believe Mr. Fortes is going to be talking with Mr. Parisian about. We don't quite have on the schedule yet, but we're going to set one. Yeah.
There's one point that I'd like to clarify, is that it's been said that our field has been designed after the Borden count. And our field was not designed after any particular field. 2 years ago, when we first encountered some problems with the field, the upper field, Mr. Forte brought in a representative of Field Turf to look at the layout of our field, our athletic fields. It was his suggestion to Mr. Forte that laid out the format that we've been following and the one that we presented in terms of the perspective format for the lower field. So we didn't design it after anything specific other than what the dimensions of our current athletic field, lower field, was able to accommodate. And when Mr. Forte was putting together his presentation for the bond referendum, he asked, is there any field that you've constructed that looks like this field? Again, we've had this design for almost 2 years now, and it was a suggestion that there was a field in Bordentown that had the same dimension. So that's where that Bordentown diagram came from. We didn't specifically go to Bordentown and say, give us this field. It just so happens they have a field, the same layout, because they have the same dimensions in terms of their athletic area as we get. If you want to think about that. Other than that, there have been some informal meetings between board members and the neighborhood committee. I know at least 3 of us have had informal meetings on an individual basis with them, Mr. Eunice, Mr. Day, and myself. Met informally with the representative of the committee. Mr. Spardell met with the representative of the committee, and Mr. Held and Mr. Martin. And Mr. Forte met today with the representative of the committee also. So that's at least 5 meetings that I'm aware of with either formally or informally with members of the neighborhood community.
Okay, any discussion items? We don't have anything listed on the agenda. All right, superintendent's report. Okay. So, one of the things that Mr. Quattrochi spoke about for a minute was in the education committee. We wanted to pull together a quick education committee with one item on the agenda that had to do with the waiver that we wanted to apply for to the state to allow us to eliminate one of the formal observations of teachers next year and replace it with multiple walkthrough observations. So in other words, right now the current law requires that you go in the classroom 3 times for a formal observation. What we're asking the state, and we have granted this in other places, is we'd like to replace one of the observations
with more frequent walkthroughs. Like, for example, probably once a month, teachers will have what a walkthrough observation is a pretty specific thing. You're looking for 2 or 3 important elements, you're recording the data, and we share the data with the staff. So we're asking the state and the county to see if they would see fit to approve this. It has been granted. I know, for example, Parsippany was granted a waiver, and we've heard about some other ones. I can't recall off the top of my head. So we're hopeful that it will be granted so that we feel do a better job of it by changing it up a little bit. And it's on for a resolution tonight just because that's the protocol. Those of you that follow our baseball game that we normally have at Montclair State every year at Yogi Berra, that was moved to next week because of the rain tonight, which is a good thing for me, because I like to see it. I had a meeting today with the neighbors, with the group that lives surrounding around the field. We had a representative from each of the 3 streets, and then one other person came in. So we have one from Franklin, one from Grove, one from, actually we had 2 from Dodd. Then we had an extra person in there that couldn't make something because he was on vacation. I asked him, I said it would be fine for him to come in just so we could get everybody's opinion on this. They provided me with some suggestions for a policy, and I've given you a photocopy of these suggestions. What I think I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit this to the committee, the 2 board members and the administrator in charge of the committee, with my suggestions on what I think the policy should be.
Which committee, Steve?
I'll give it to the field committee. Yeah. So the field committee, I'm not going to give it to the whole committee. That'll be up to the administrator to decide when he wants to give it to me. So what I'll do is I'll send to the 2 board representatives and the administrator, Mr. Frisian. I'll send you a copy of this, and I'm going to give you my recommendations on what I think we should do. And then I'm pretty much going to let you guys decide where you want to take it from there as a policy. I think that's pretty much going to be what I'm going to do with this, and that'll be it. This came from, just to back up a minute, this came from one of our meetings. It was at the HBW public meeting. We had a group of parents who were concerned, a group of people, and I met with them briefly after and said, look, after this is passed, I will send you all a letter, and I'll bring it in, and we will try to craft a policy that everybody can live with. So the first meeting we had was in April, in the beginning of April. I think it was April 1st, because there was somebody joked, is that really a joke? It was April Fool's Day. I said, no, we'll do it. So we had about 40 people there. This was a small subgroup of that, so because we really wanted to get some stuff done, and that's what we're doing. Everybody okay with that?
So what would it contain?
Well, we already have a field facilities use policy. It doesn't have specifically what time you can use fields, but we do have signage on all of our fields that said that our fields are closed between the hours of 6:30 a.m. 10:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. So they're already the latest time that we could use one of our own facilities is 10:30 p.m. So what my recommendation is going to be to add a few lines to our existing policy that dictate how often the fields, at what time the lights go off and which days.
So my suggestion is we don't do that until we get the sample schedule from Mr. Frisian, who's working on that with Mr. Cunningham.
And I think that's why I'm going to leave it off with them, and they're working on that offline, and then we'll bring it back to this committee. So,
Yeah, I think it's time to kind of overlay that design, that schedule, policy, and start to articulate that throughout the documents. It'll take time to, there's no gathering information, but I would say that's where we're heading.
When are Gary and Tim meeting? Do you know
they
when
started, right?
Started earlier. No, I'm sorry, last week. Okay.
I just want to comment on the walkthroughs. Having been through this as a teacher, they are really positive. So it's just really great. I know we hear a lot about more mandates coming down, whether it's money or whether it's time. And I believe this is an example of taking a look at what we need to accomplish in a given year, and then a given month, and a given day, and a given week, and just trying to make the best of that situation. But I would ask, if possible, could you share some of the walkthrough results and goals with the board as we go through it.
Sure.
So I'm not quite sure, so just to frame how we did it in the past at a previous school I was at, with those walkthroughs, we take a look at what the building looked like, or even what the district looks like, and if you notice a trend, set a goal to turn that around. So more than just the micro classroom, but kind of a macro goal for what that school would seem to achieve. But it'd be great to see some of that data, if possible. I'm not quite sure how you fully plan to use it, but it'd be good to hear more kind of about what your vision is for. It's a powerful tool, right? It's really powerful. It's a consistent look at what the best practice is in the classroom, right?
So
that's how you change something.
Our vision for it, and this is not Steve Forte, this is the team, is that it will look something like this. There'll be two different types of walkthroughs. One would be like a generic, we're collecting data. Something easy, like how many teachers have the objective on the board. I'm just giving you an example, it's an easy one. If we did 300 walkthroughs looking for that one thing, and we found that, 280 of them had it on there, that's the kind of data we'd share. So there's that's I think the first type that you were talking about. The second type we're going to talk about will be more of something that would only be shared with that teacher. In other words, you go in, you look at something, and you give them a very short, just brief description of what you saw, maybe a suggestion, maybe an area of improvement, or maybe, hey, wait, that's excellent what I just saw, something like that. So I think what we're planning on is two different types. I think anything that can get administrators in classrooms more is a good thing. So that's what we're looking at.
And it's surprising. I mean, I know some objectives on the board is just one example, but it's a pretty serious example since that's what state grade.
Sure.
Races on me, or not racist, but does have part of the stipulation of what needs to be in the classroom. Be surprised if you don't check it, it doesn't end up happening. You check it, and next time you check it, you have 300 out of 300, a random number.
What I found with that, Mike, is when I did it in my past was when you bring attention to something that you want to do, it just gets done. In other words, if all of a sudden we're saying we want the objective on the board, I'm just using this because this is not what we're saying. You go in the room and you start saying, hey, by the way, we went to the room, only 70% of you have the objective on the board. Next time you go in, it's 80. Next time you go in, it's 90. It's just the way human nature.
And kind of co-investigate that together and some of those goals. It'd be great if you could hear what the teachers think would be a great goal to set around what those walkthroughs and what they include as well.
Well, with the new DIAC committee, this stuff will all be vetted through the teachers. So it's really, I think it's a positive thing. In your packets, you see a few resignations for various positions. All the people have their own reasons to go. Like I'm going here because I want to go to a different school because it's better. It's all either moving out or job transfers or something along those lines. And I just want to let the board and the public know that we're out there actively recruiting for replacements for the staff for important positions. Today, Cindy, Rich Wirtz, and myself sat with a consultant. This is the second consultant that we have interviewed for this technology person to oversee the project. So it would be like a design phase, a specs phase, and a management phase. It's probably about, the gentleman today said it was probably about a year-long process from start to finish, being involved in the creation of the plan, and then the RFPs, and actually implementing it and managing it. So for today.
Okay, let's do resolutions.
I just want to make everybody aware that there's also a single sheet that's an addendum resolution on the counter. I don't know if everybody got that. Some people came early, may I pick that up. Resolved that the board approve resolution number 1 through resolution number 29 and addendum resolutions number 1 through 3, and then that separate addendum resolution number 1. It's a personnel resolution to hire a new staff member.
So, second. Moved by Ms. Guido, seconded by Mr. Hughes. Any questions?
Yeah, number 15, so that's the Mylan contract.
Yep.
So I think I have a copy of their proposal, which would then get converted to the contract, but it wasn't in the format, right, the SDA format.
Right.
So
It's
could
that
you send
AIN.
me, just a copy of the final executed contract? And I see French and Krill is not on here, right? We approved the conditional, last time we did I remember we approved it conditionally subject to the attorney review?
Right.
Right, so we don't have to, we don't need a resolution to finalize that?
There was like a minor thing, but the good thing is they're starting working on the process. They've started working for us, like doing the topographic study and things like that.
Okay, so will there be a formal resolution to finalize that, or is that not necessary?
Yeah, we can do that next week.
It's more just a perfunctory thing, so if you can send me a copy of that final executed contract as well for my records?
Okay.
I have a question on the contract also. Does the specifically mention in the contract?
We told them we don't want any mentioned at all.
Right. Because the first contract that you got, they were listed in it, and then the recommendation of the attorney was that he didn't find it necessary to acknowledge them since they're a subcontractor with Mylan. So,
Does it allow for subcontracting or the work that the contract allow for subcontracting? Now, obviously it must, since they have this agreement with.
right, well, their contract, Mylan's contract to us doesn't need to indicate that. I mean, that's their business.
I thought they did mention that in there.
And we had to take it out. I
Right.
told them today that we don't want any mention of EI in there. Not because it's bad or anything, it's just they deal with EI, not us. So our attorney has to get it out, and that's it. So once we get all,
So our lawyer asked them to remove EI's name.
well, he didn't know what he said. He said he said that struck a chord, but he didn't understand why. So I wrote back to him, and I said, I think we should get it out. And he agreed. So we didn't want to mention it.
Why did you want to get it out? Why did they want it in the first place?
I don't know why they wanted it, but there's no other mention of
I
it.
would probably want it in, and I can tell you what experience this is like. If they're a subcontractor and their portion of the contract goes bad, and you've got to sue somebody, you're gonna have to sue Mylan, and EI is off, for all intents and purposes, is off the hook. If it's in there, then they become party to the suit. So, I'm not so sure it is the wisest thing to leave their name out. I mean, it'd be better to sue two parties than sue one party. And I can understand why Mylan would want them in.
So what I'll do is, because I was just acting on the advice, I will follow up with Doug Kovats tomorrow. But I feel strongly that if his advice to us as our construction attorney to take it out, then I was gonna recommend it comes out.
Can we push these to the next meeting, because the 15 says we're approving the contract, not a contract, a first floor contract. And the questions that we have, as Joe was asking, is about the contract. I'm glad we didn't approve the resolution that says we're approving the contract, that none of us have seen.
Well, I think we saw it in the email, right? So it wasn't in
I saw the contract, but I was not aware of this EI change. I'm somewhat indifferent to it. But what I don't understand is why they want it in, why you want it out, and why the attorney does it, and then it goes to.
I know why they want it in, and I'll tell you, again,
Why would they then agree with it? Why would they Mylan agreed to just take it out?
Well, I mean, that was today, so
Well, because you forced them to, you said you wanted it out.
I didn't get the final thing back, it was late in the afternoon, so I'm
So
gonna,
we're approving a contract that this contractor has not even agreed to?
well, you've been working for me.
No, we were approving the contract with the name in it, and then this whole thing, came up today where Doug got back to us very late and said, I think you should take the name out. So, I mean, we'll table it tonight,
Okay.
and just going on what Mr. Guino said, I think it's, it goes both ways, right? Because does EI want their name in there in case they want to sue us? I don't know.
I'll tell you the downside to that is that if you it's suing two parties as opposed to one party. They probably each have different insurance carriers, and you could probably get money out of both insurance carriers as opposed to only one insurance carrier. I mean, I'll give you specifics of the problem that I ran into and why probably would have been better in the long run to have the subcontractor named as opposed to have the subcontractor out. Now, I'm not an attorney. We pay an attorney a sufficient fee to review these things, but I can see some reason why naming them would be an advantage as opposed to being a disadvantage. I'll leave it up to the legal folks to give us the final recommendation, but I don't know. I'm not crazy about it. I'm not sure that that's the wisest thing to do.
My other question is on number 20. I don't have an attachment. I don't think I do. Attachment transfer.
Yeah, there was another big click to it.
Yeah, years ago, you used to send out just the transfer. One page, here's the transfer.
It's there too.
It's in there?
Yeah, it's, let's see, February.
Oh, it's in the treasurer's report?
Yeah, it's only maybe 3 pages in February. Yeah, February was 3 pages, and March was.
Here's what I have for February. I have this report.
Right, that's the treasurer, and the next page should be,
Then I have.
that's the transfers.
These are all the transfers?
Yeah.
With all this?
No, not all of it. If you just pull that off, it should be stapled. Yeah. So that's
Just this
3
page?
Yeah, 3 pages. No, it's stapled.
3 pages.
3 pages.
Oh, the state, I see.
And then the third document is the secretary's report.
Okay. And then this March has the same thing?
Yeah, in March, you're gonna see that transfer report is 6 pages long, because that's the month where we paid the retro and everybody moved up on the guide. So I made multiple transfers between salary lines in that month. And you'll see that in the comments. As you go down the comments, you'll see it's a salary transfer
Which month?
for March, the month of March.
So if I mix these up, how do I tell them apart? What's the mix up?
Because there's a date at the top. It's really small.
It's both April 25th.
No, to the right. It says the range of dates is between
Oh,
February
okay.
1st and February 28th,
Okay.
and then the pages are numbered. So February's 3 pages, March is 6.
Okay.
I see what you want to read the question, because they're in table 14, 15, and 16.
Right. So you want me to ask for,
Yeah.
yeah, yes.
Motion to table 14, 15.
Everybody opposed? You have to get the second. Give me 1 second.
Second.
All right, table, anybody opposed? All right, let's do it again, except for 14, 15, 16.
Okay. So I do the roll call, right?
Now, we have a full question.
So, the board move resolutions number 1 through number 29, addendum resolutions number 1, 2, and 3, and personnel addendum resolution number 1, tabling resolutions 14, 15, and 16. So we just do roll call. Mr. Sparrow?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Aye.
Mr. Lino? Mr. Eunice?
Comment. I wanted to thank on 3.2 Mr. Brock myself for his years of service. He is resigning. Did have him as a teacher, and I still do have the toothpick bridge that we made in this class, which is made out of probably thousands of toothpicks. but many years of service, so I wanted to make sure to say thank you. Yes.
Mr. Quattro.
Aye.
Okay, welcome up to public comment or question.
Good evening, Mark Kaplan, 137 Grove. Couple of questions. The ratings on the bonds, what were they today? What is our rating?
We were and I have to confirm this, we were either a AA- or AAA-, but I'll confirm that with the consultants.
And you said the rate is 3.039.
Right.
The average,
Okay.
that's the average.
The contract for French and Gorilla, now I understand has been tabled, so you're not passing that tonight.
The Mylan.
No.
So we did French Barolo last meeting.
Okay, so the French and Gorilla, the contract is going to award. Okay. What is the timetable? I know that the people who have been doing the survey, I've been watching them the last couple of days. So what is the timetable for their report to come back to you folks?
We didn't get a solid commitment on when the drawings were going to be done. I mean, the first thing was to do that and then get back to us. Once they have the topographical survey.
What's your best guess?
It'd be tough for me to give you an idea, but, I'd just be guessing. I don't want to just throw out a date,
Okay.
I mean, that's basically the process we're going to go through to get this back.
Right.
Remember we talked about it before?
Yes,
It's
of
kind of like
course.
the canvas. I think that's what we said. We're going
Yes.
to get back to canvas and then the drawing will go over
Okay,
there.
I was just curious on how long they take. I know that, getting paid quite a bit of money, and so, you would hope that they would move at a good rate. I also would like to agree with Mr. Bellino on what he said about having both names. I also have experiences with lawsuits, and the more people that you have the opportunity to sue, the better off you are. So I think that his point is very well taken, and it should be considered. The only thing else that I wanted to say tonight, I think that, and this is kind of controversial, no doubt, the Board of Education has an opportunity to consult with some real professionals that are here in this town on this project. We're talking about the Fields project, of course. And what I'm referring to is the mayor and council of the town of Verona, and most importantly, the town engineer. These are professional people that have very good feelings and good knowledge about such projects. And one of the ones that most concern me is this clay pipe that's well over 100 years old, that runs from the crest of Sampson, where the original building was, on down through the field, that will probably be crushed, and it's going to have to be replaced with new sewage line, which I understand that you have a contingency amount put aside to replace this. So I've been doing more homework on this. But I really believe that at some point, possibly after these drawings are presented from French and Perillo, that a consultation with the town engineer certainly would be beneficial to all people. And I would hope that that would be taken under consideration. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kaplan, I'll just give you a quick update. That's kind of hot off the presses, if you will. So the engineering firm is doing their topographical survey
Yes.
as we speak, so they'll go into next week. Then the next step after that, or after they can complete that, then they will start to be presenting us with their final designs. And as the field committee feeds back to them their input as to how the layout and the orientation of the fields will be recommended. And as to the clay pipe, so the current, so I don't want to jump the gun, but it looks like we're leaning toward just a simple redirecting that pipe
Well,
around the field. So
right, I understand that, but the pipe that's there now is not going to stand up to the construction. It's going to collapse. Any normal engineer will tell you that a 100-plus-year-old clay pipe, it's not even made out of cast iron, is going to have to be replaced, which I would hope that, I mean, it's an important sewer line, so that's going to have to be looked into. The other factor is about the cooling of the field itself. This artificial turf needs to be cooled. And from what I've been told is that the plan is to have hoses and personnel, Board of Education personnel, to hose it down instead of some sort of automated system. Again, I think consultation with the town engineer would be helpful on these matters.
And we've done that numerous times, and we even discussed this in the meeting where, with the town engineer in the room,
Yes.
you were in the room, I was
Yes.
in the room,
Right.
we talked about the,
Right.
and Mr. Martin, I think, captured the trade-offs between the irrigation approach
Yes.
and the philosophy for irrigating and you just trade off capital versus labor. That's the classic decision making that goes on in every CapEx project in a corporation. And we just have our engineers, as well as other, even the turf companies have suggested, anecdotally, granted, very formally, our engineering company very formally said, it's not necessary to put in an automated sprinkler system. It's too much capital, and the labor component for the few days that you're going to need it will more than be covered by the savings from the capital. So Mr. Held has a different opinion. He feels that the automated system is much, but it costs money, of course, but it's less labor intensive. So there's a trade-off that engineers can agree.
I agree.
So we're going one way, the town's going the other way.
I can see that. Okay, thank you very much.
Ralph?
Good evening. Drew Michelson, 14 Dodd Terrace. I'll be brief. I just wanted to have a statement and another question. My statement is, it's about the fields. I live near Verona High School, and I understand what it means to live near the school and the fields. My home is not valued any less than anyone else in this town or this room. This field project has no studies done to see how it impacts the neighborhood. The neighborhood should not bear the burden of fitting to this major development. The Verona Board of Education must reduce the size and scope of this project to fit the neighborhood. My question is to Mr. Swardell. Did you not tell a member of the neighborhood committee that you would like to see the lights lit up from the sky?
My personal, that's
So
my
you
personal
publicly
view.
said that. You publicly saying that you want to see the lights from that field lit up from the sky.
From Voyager spacecraft, yes. And so, granted, it was, I trust you can imagine that it was a figure of speech.
No.
But I
can't imagine that
I
actually.
am in favor of lighting up the field so that we can play night baseball for sure. That's
From
why,
the sky.
yeah, but I said the Voyager spacecraft.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Really? So you're gonna, in front of everyone here and everyone in there, you're gonna say that you want to see the light from the space shuttle, or whatever you said.
Yeah, I don't think we have the money to do that, but.
Yeah.
So, okay, yes, sir, I said that, but it was a figure of speech. So if you want to hold me, if you
Yes.
want to hold that against me, go right ahead, sir.
I will. I will.
Fair enough.
That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
My name is Mohammed Tandar Terrace. Statement I'd like to read. In 1979, I graduated from Verona High School. I was in the color guard during my 4 years at VHS and was the color guard captain during my senior year. spinning my rifle to the top-rated music of the marching blue and white, competing in marching band competitions, and marching in numerous parades was my time of glory at VHS. As a young wife and mother, I moved to Dot Terrace in 1991, where I met many amazing people, most of whom still live here today. Our kids grew up together, and we share a bond that is unbreakable. New families that have moved in also found out instantly what a treasure Dot Terrace is. Families do not move from Dot Terrace. I am an avid fan of the marching maroon and white, but I am also an avid fan of sports. My son played football at VHS, and my daughter played soccer. I proudly sat through 4 years of VHS football games and 4 years of VHS soccer games at the upper field. That being said, you can see I am a sports person too. The sound of the band practicing in the morning, at night, and weekends to me means it's time for football. I strongly believe the parent involvement in sports and academics is what makes our schools successful. As a new homeowner on Dot Terrace who loves sports, I was so excited that we were living by the high school. The closeness to FM Brown and VHS always made me feel part of the educational and sports community. The FM Brown staff welcomed me warmly, and I could not wait to hear the marching maroon and white start practicing each summer leading into fall. I guess what I need you all to know is I love living on Dot Terrace. But as a once young young home buyer, I do not understand how a member of the current Board of Ed has the nerve to comment that the homeowners should have expected changes since they bought near the high school. No one in their 30s can foresee this unfortunate circumstance in their 50s. Though we cannot predict the future and we can expect change to happen, but to what extent? Our small neighborhood is being bulldozed by our town, and it does not feel good. The neighbors who live around VHS understand what living near a high school is like. The fact of the matter is that what the Board of Ed is presenting is unreasonable and places a burden on the homeowners that we should not be expected to carry. Furthermore, the Board of Ed is building this field with absolutely no analysis of any kind to ensure that it meets any town standards or fits in our neighborhood. By holding the homeowners responsible for buying a house near a high school places no responsibility on the Board of Ed. Comments like they should have expected changes since they bought near the high school shows a person's true character and ignorance. I am also hurt by the comments that we are only 50 houses that will be affected by the proposed field construction. These 50 houses are collateral damage to your master plan. I am as important to this town as any one of you sitting on the Board of Ed panel, and my home is as important as yours. Ironically, I have not heard one Board of Ed member state they would welcome this in their backyards, but they are quick to tell me I should. And not one of you lives within the perimeter of the high school. I do not appreciate this comment that was made of us being only 50 houses, again showing the person's true character and ignorance. To the members of the Board of Ed who understand our plight and are sincerely working with us to do the right thing, I thank you. And thank you to my neighbors and friends for also taking a stand on this referendum by understanding what we are facing and speaking up on our behalf. Thank you.
Excuse me, if you don't mind, you just
Waiting for that.
yeah.
Come on.
So, within so I think you're attributing the 50 houses to me as well, I imagine?
If you would like that to be made public, that's up to you. I did not name any names.
Okay, well, if... So
Are you the one who said that? Is that what you're telling everybody?
Those words, I'll tell you, those words have been used out of context and manipulated. Here's the conversation that I had with Mrs. Bocchese. She accused the Board of Education of not inviting your neighbors to be part of the committee, which is, I personally invited Mr. Kaplan. He was the first one on the committee. So that was a mischaracterization of the Board of Education's intent to include you. Then she also accused the Board of Education of not allowing full representation or adequate representation of your neighbors on the field committee. So my comment to her was, wait a minute, there are 3 of your neighbors on the committee out of how many? So that's 25%.
About 21.
Okay. Well, Well, Mr.
Okay,
Cordell,
so it's 15%,
the reason that there's
20%.
people
No,
from
let me
Terrace on
finish,
there is
because
because
the
you
words were manipulated to give you the wrong impression
No, they
of
were
what I
not.
said.
You're not walking in my shoes, so you really don't understand what it is living on my terrace right now. I also don't appreciate the comment, which I did not bring up, but currently found out, that one of our neighbors was approached, that there's going to be winners and losers. He's a loser. So there are comments being made and being repeated, and I don't care if they're taken out of context or not. They should not be being said
Okay.
at all.
So I will finish, and then I'm done. What I said was that I disagreed with Mrs. Bocchese that your neighbors were not represented, adequately represented, or fairly represented on the committee of 15 or 20, when you had 3, when if you use the ratio of the number of houses, so there's 50 houses that are impacted by the lights, compared to 5,000 homes in Verona, right, that's 1%, and yet the committee is represented by you by upwards of 15 or 20%. Those were the comments that I made to Mrs. Bocchese. So she's manipulated that comment to suggest that I don't care about the inference that you're asking people to make, is that I don't care about those 50 people, and I'm the one who's championed your involvement, for God's sake. So I totally reject the accusation that I am throwing those 50 people, as Mrs. Bocchese said, that, oh, I threw her a bone by inviting Mr. Kaplan. Okay, so if we want to get into a war of words, we can do that, but I am personally motivated to see your sentiments and your concerns represented on the committee. And I fostered that idea.
Okay, Mr. Scardell, first of all, you're making comments that you're now treading back and explaining why you're making those comments, which is unacceptable in your position. The voyager lights, for example. Also, when we went to the meeting with Mr. Forte, the reason that there are now two members from my block on the committee is because we said, well, who from Don Terrace is on the committee? Nobody was. My husband offered to be on the committee, was not selected. Barbara Bocchese was offered to be on the committee, was not selected. Until we put up a stink, no one on our block was on the committee.
My point.
So as far as I believe that you're throwing Barbara under the bus now because you are making comments and you want the town to know that you're making these comments in jest. You really don't mean what you're saying. And we're misunderstanding what you're saying.
This is not in jest. My point is that I had one conversation about the 50 houses with one person. That was Mrs. Bocchese. So that's the source of the mischaracterization of those comments. I'm clarifying for you the context in which those comments were made, that I felt that it was inappropriate to accuse the Board of Education of not allowing your neighbors to be represented because you were, as a proportion of the number of homes, that was my comment, is that you were overrepresented, which I was happy to see. I think you should be overrepresented. You're making, your homes are impacted more than any other homes.
Exactly.
But we weren't originally the biggest portion. We are now because of our speaking up. I believe the original portion was mostly sports parents, which were all for this.
No, but the impact, the perceived impact to your homes is greater than I live on a field. So if you want somebody who wouldn't mind if they had, I would not mind if we had lights at Forest Avenue Field. So, for what it's worth. But my point is that Mrs. Bocchese has twisted and manipulated my comment about your representation on the committee to suggest that I don't care about only those 50 people who live on Dodd.
Houses.
50 houses that live on Dodd or Grover Franklin. Because that is completely a mischaracterization of my comment. And it's not even true. It's not even my sentiment. I don't feel that way. So to suggest that I don't care about it, I'm just trying to clarify that it's not correct. That's my own.
So that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you in advance for your compassion and understanding. I'm Brian Janik. I live at 13 Dock Terrace. It's obvious I live near Verona High School and understand what it means to live near the school and fields. Although I've heard comments that property taxes for homes around the school are lower, that's not true. My home is not valued any less than anyone else in town. The latest reevaluation used square footage of the home, the condition of the grounds, and the number and condition of kitchens and baths as factors in the evaluation. There was no adjustment for being close to a school in the field. The scope of this project, with its encroachment into the neighborhood and its impact on the environment, is not necessary and is not acceptable. Because the area for the fields is small for all of the uses desired, perimeter lighting has to be used instead of lighting individual fields. That requires extremely high masts for mounting the lights in order to illuminate the entire area. And it requires lights on the centrally located high poles to be used for lighting every field. We're talking 110-foot masts with over 1,500-watt metal halide fixtures on top of the pole. That's 5 times higher and 100 times brighter than a highway streetlight. Those poles would be 4 times higher than the peaks of the tallest home roofs and would be an extreme intrusion into this residential neighborhood. There are other options that can meet the intent of the referendum and also save taxpayers money. No detailed studies were made to determine the best plan for these fields. No formal coordination for non-school recreation uses of fields that included use of township fields was done. Only a rough estimate corresponding to a single cram everything in design was made. The explanation for this was that the board was not going to spend any money for detailed studies until they got the bond passed and knew they had the money. As of now, the board is only proceeding with development of this single plan. Use of the planned new township fields for night games would provide obvious cost savings for the field at the high school. Coordinating with the township for adequate parking and spectator facilities to handle varsity games at Hillside should not be an insurmountable problem. Serious studies of alternatives needs to be done. I urge the board to remove lighting from the plan for the high school fields and to mediate the reach of this project into the neighborhood. Finally, no one in Verona would want lights like these in their own backyard. Please be a good neighbor to those of us who are already good neighbors for school sports programs. Thank you.
Brian? Yes. Brian? Yeah, just a quick comment. We are having a dialogue with President Brillo about alternatives on the upper field and lower field, given that we have put in the safest number for how to remediate these fields without going over our expenses for it. And there was also some sentiment from the Good Neighbor Committee as well to make sure that we've got those options as well. So alternatives are being looked at. I want to just make sure that you are aware of it. Thank you. I appreciate the input.
Thank you. I did hear of other alternatives, and I don't know, and I know a lot of you got a letter from an engineer that you originally talked to, and I know he had other ideas, and so I'm aware of that, and I do think it's time to look at the other alternative, because this thing is nasty. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, the design. I really couldn't. I mean, the poles up at Centennial Field are what, 60 foot high? These things are almost twice that high? It's nuts.
Where's the design? Where did you get the design?
I got, Musco, he's got like nine different things of 3 different lighting levels, 9 different proposals,
27 pages from us.
27 pages.
You don't have it? He gave,
The
we
one
got
that I
it.
sent you.
Yes,
Okay,
obviously you didn't look at it.
I got what you got. I looked at it.
Right, so that's, okay.
Yeah, 110 foot high.
I know they're 110 foot high.
And the thing, and they're mounted
Right
at the
now we
top.
have 6, right now we have 6 light poles. Here's the quote, 6 light poles.
Yeah, and they have 21 1,500 watt metal halide lights that produce something like 150,000 lumens each. That's huge.
Yeah, that was a model, the various options that Musco provided to us. So, right now there are 6 field lights that are included in the project.
Well, the plan with the
So
6,
in order for us to
the
see
plan with the
the
6 field
Voyager-
lights includes 121 lights on top of a 110-foot pole. That's the plan with 6 poles.
That's the Musco model.
That's right.
That's not the plan, that's a model.
That's the preliminary
Right,
drawing.
right. And that was a model to show the extent of the light spillage. You could see how much light would extend into Franklin Avenue.
Well, I don't know how to read that
Right, well,
spillage.
that's what that
I would like to know.
That model showed light spillage. So you could see that there's practically no light that spills out into the surrounding area.
That's difficult to believe.
Okay.
It's very difficult to believe. The standard that I saw from another city said that you should, the target should be 0.25 foot candles 5 feet from the field, and 0.5 foot candles at the border of the property line.
Where was that?
It was an outfit in California.
I'm sorry?
It's research from the California town.
Tell you in a second. 12-page document, I think you got this too, from the city of Moreno Valley. And it's a 12-page document, and I believe Barbara Butchie's sent it to you. I really wish you folks would reconsider this.
I just want to say one thing, and I don't want people to leave here with false hopes, because I personally don't know of any alternative being considered for the lower field. The alternative that I'm aware of is how to remediate the upper fields, in addition to the lower field. So that's the only alternative that I, as a board member and a member of the projects committee, am aware of.
All right, well, I guess what we would suggest is that putting turf on the fields down there and using them is fine. What we really object to is these very extremely high lights. If you could remediate the upper field properly and put lights up there, that would be a lot better than lighting the whole block in the lower field with 110-foot poles. I mean, that's really an intrusion. It is an intrusion. Would you want this in your backyard?
I'm just reporting, I'm just telling you what I'm aware of as a board member.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. And what I'm asking you to do is take another look at other alternatives. And I don't think they'll cost more money. I don't think it's that hard to work with the township so that, you know, the football games or whatever could be played up at Hillside. Or put lights at the upper field. But to light this whole block.
The referendum language said turf and lights on the lower field.
The referendum offered a certain amount of money for the high school. that can be flipped around.
With the language of the referendum. So.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. It said $727.249 million for the high school. And it didn't say this much for this and that much for that. You can move that around.
Just telling what the referendum.
And I'm agreeing with you, but my interpretation apparently is different than yours. It didn't lay out so much for the lower field. There's no figure for the lower field.
We're talking about cost, and I'm talking about language. So I don't think we're talking about the same thing. I don't.
Well, anyway, do you agree that the referendum said 7 point whatever million for the high school?
The referendum said 3.8 million for the Verona Community Multi-Purpose Field, create a turf surface with a lower field, soccer, basketball field.
That wasn't in the referendum.
It's not in the referendum. Here it is, it's not there.
The details like that are not in the referendum.
No, this was the white paper.
Well, I'm talking about what the people voted on. People voted on 7 point whatever million for use at the high school.
Yeah, but it included the lower field.
Those are estimates that are behind it, but they're not, you don't have to adhere to those.
Okay. All right.
You know?
We don't have to vote the language of the referendum.
You will have to use the 7 point whatever million are on the high school. You can,
I'm
but,
not arguing that, I'm just.
and on that list of things that are there.
Just to add to that, though, on the list, when we did the referendum, it was discussed in the paper and all the meetings done with Mr. Forte to all the voters in the town. Anybody who's listening, went to our website, it listed the referendum, included the lower field.
But when you went to vote,
Yeah,
it didn't say it.
It didn't
I
say that.
understand that, but we were talking about how
Okay.
it was presented to the voters, how it was presented
And what
to the
if you didn't
paper.
go to one of those, you went to the voting?
Mr. Kaplan, you can't have a meeting.
No, I mean, I didn't find out about this until, except one of the neighbors told me about it.
I
I mean, how is the average person gonna find out? I'm retired, I don't have anybody in school, how am I supposed to find out?
I just came on the board in January. I'm a
Okay.
parent. I'm an average person here that came on the board to make a difference. I came out there, I went out and talked to a lot of people during and before this referendum came out. The discussion was upper field, lower field. I came on this board, all the discussions became upper field and then became lower field. The referendum is more than just a field. And people came out to vote. It was the parents, it was the band parents.
Yeah, it was.
It was the sports parents. It was the people in this town that voted for what we told them. When you talk about transparency, you talk about being open. We were open and honest and said, we're talking about this referendum that included technology, security, maintenance, and a field. And that field we talked about was the lower field. So for you to act like, and I was a big proponent of making sure we remediate the upper field, we do something to the upper field, because that DEP sign drives me crazy every time I drive by this high school. So for you to come back and say, and I appreciate your information, we're working with the committees, we're working with the people in the organizations in this town. But this referendum was voted on by everybody in this town. And it was presented that there was a field, and that field was the lower field. Whether people like the upper field, lower field, in that plan, we talked about remediating the upper field and having a lower field. So to say that remediation and lower field was not in there.
I didn't say that.
You just did say that.
We have no problem with putting turf on the lower field. We have no problem with remediating the thing. The only problem we have is with the lights on the
I
lower
understand
field.
that, and are we working with groups, with committees, and with the different people in our town about the lights? Are we not doing that?
I hope so.
And we just had a meeting, Steve Spardell was nice enough to go to a meeting with the Italian Associates, with Mr. Howell and Mr. Martin, and people from the Be a Good Neighbor Committee, and sat and talked about it. We also have a committee where we have your folks on the committee, along with representation from the whole town.
Thank you.
So we're very involved.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just, we can read back that, so I said this at the last meeting, I said it the meeting before that, I said, it's okay, so I'm gonna say it again now. None of this matters. That's my, the only thing that's gonna matter is when do we expect these lights to be used? That's all that's gonna matter. Mr. Forte explained earlier, we're committed to putting it into a policy.
That could be changed.
Sorry, thanks. I'm not gonna battle, I just, I can't, I just run out of energy to battle this nonsense, I mean,
Imagine how we feel.
Think
How
about it.
nonsense.
it's, I
And
can't,
how
I
it
can't,
should be changed,
I
always.
can't, I can't, anything could be changed.
There you go, then what should we rely on?
I'm with you. What we want to do is, we need, I'll tell you what's probably not gonna change is the number of games and the number of sports and the number of activities that the town of Verona has. We're landlocked, there's no free land in Verona. So today, we have 2 fields in town with lights in them. We have Centennial, we have Lynn Drive in the town. Centennial is lit up 5 days a week, I think it is, Monday through Friday, till about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Depends on the day, sometimes, right? Virginia will make it midnight, let's say midnight, okay? 2 fields. When the lower field is done and Hilltop is done, you'll have 5 lit fields. Okay? If you took any sample schedule and you tried to work in the activities that today, go to whatever time they go to today, and you had 5 fields instead of 2 to conduct them, what you're going to quickly find out is the need for lights in the lower field is not going to be as dramatic as we're fearing. Before we decide anything else, we have Mr. Friesen, the athletic director, who does all the scheduling of the Board of Education fields, and Mr. Cunningham from the rec department sitting in the room, and they're putting together what they believe to be a realistic sample schedule. They're the ones that do all the scheduling for the town of Verona. The 2 guys do it together. Once we have that, we'll have a better sense of what the expectation will be around the lights, and we're happy to put it into a policy. Now, anything can change, I hear you. But if it's a board policy, it's got to go through a process to change. It's not simple, it's not that you just strike a pen and say, I'm just going to change it. So the commitment, and the only way it's going to play out is the first to show you that the commitment is to do it fairly and to not disrupt people's lives in any way, period.
Thank you. Joanne Martin, 14 Woodland Avenue. 2 questions. My understanding was that to be able to sit on one of the ad hoc committees, you needed to have some kind of expertise on that, in that field. Is that correct? Am I correct?
No, when it comes to the committees, I don't think any board member selected any of it. It was done by the administrative team. So when it comes to committees, it's always going to be a balance of how many people have volunteered for a committee, because it becomes unwieldy very, very quickly. Skill level or experience, or other relevance that might be considered.
Yeah, I mean, it did start off that way, where it was more, there was a couple things that we're looking at criteria, but that we decided.
Okay, perfect. And then my other question is, in the scope of the project, construction, there isn't any blasting that's going to take place, correct? Like it's construction. It's digging and, there's no rock that has to be, blasted to build what's already there. It's just, you're improving on what is there and building lights. That's it, right? So I don't really believe that, while I appreciate the plight of the residents around the high school and the field, I don't think that the detriment, if you're talking about detriment, then you should probably talk to the people on Montclair Avenue who are going to be, they're going to be exposed to blasting on this development, project that's going to take place up on Bloomfield Avenue. So I just think that, it's all about putting things into perspective, putting things, just giving the board let them have their leeway to do what it is that they need to do while they are trying to work with the community, working with the neighbors. That's what they're trying to do. And I applaud them for doing that, because I have to tell you, there are many, many boards, whether it's the town council, whether it's another board of ed in another community, who just say, it's my way or the highway. They don't care about, it's their policy, it's their procedures, and they could give two shakes. I applaud this board for taking that step, to taking that initiative. And rather than working in the realm of fear of what may happen, just hear the plan out. You don't even know what the plan is yet. There hasn't been an approved plan. There hasn't been an approved document that's been presented anywhere. It's all hearsay. It's all modeling. It's all, wishes and whatnots. Let's hear what they have to put together first, and then let's go from there. Thank you.
We'll talk to her the way they're addressing us.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Board. Dan Motley, 129 Franklin Street, Verona. I definitely appreciate the meetings we've had. Mr. Forte was more than understanding to our plight. Mr. Spardell came to the meeting on 423, which I'm one of the members of the Be Good Neighbor Coalition. At the meeting, you know who all was there. At this meeting, it was brought up before, which I was going to send back the spaceship that you want to see the lights from. And I know you're a very passionate individual, because I learned at the last meeting that you've taken the referendum to people's houses to show. So I understand your passion on this, and I also am a passionate person. What I don't understand is how you can be on the committees for the fields, but also have a severe conflict of interest in sporting affiliations that will use the field at the same time. I believe you should recuse yourself from these boards, because it is a total conflict of interest. You're with the soccer league, you sit on the board, you play on the field, on the lower field. And what kind of went off in my head, why I started kicking around looking for some of this information, was at that same meeting with Mr. Martins, we had talked about other means to save money. And you said right out, hey, if you save money, I am in. But we are having night baseball at that field. I don't care what happens, along those lines.
No, I didn't say that, because we don't have the money for it. So
You
right
did-
now, it's not
Maybe not
budgeted.
verbatim, but you did say, you're on board for
I
the
would be
savings.
I would be a personal, but it's not me.
I would just like to see night baseball there as part of the community, as part of the program. But please don't accuse me of having a conflict of interest, because I play baseball on that field on Sunday mornings. And I'm not even a fan of artificial turf. If it were up to me, I'd play my baseball on natural grass with a groomed infield of clay. So this is totally counter to my personal interest. So there's certainly there is a conflict of my interest. I'm against the field for my personal conflict, and I don't care about the lights for my personal use.
So you would say that we're on the
Please don't suggest that I am doing any of this for my own personal benefit, sir.
Sir, I'm telling you what I found. I found that you play in the league on the field, the Verona Twins from the United States Amateur Baseball League, along with other people from sports affiliations. I find you're a treasurer of the United Soccer Club in Verona, and I know you've coached as well, the USL, which I did as well. And it just, to me, it taints your objectivity that you could be on this. So you're saying that your USABL league will never play a night game on that field?
There's no provision for lights for the baseball fields, or any of the plan that we have right now.
Not according to Mr. Spardell. It was going through, that's how
I'm just telling you what the engineer report is.
I understand that, but, we said at one meeting, we hear one thing, we said at another meeting, we hear another
I'm just
thing.
telling you what's written down in the plan.
Well, that's all I can say. If you don't see a conflict of interest to that, I really think there's something wrong. It kind of takes all the hard work.
He's not a member of the field committee. Mr. Eunice and I are members of the board representatives to the field committee. The field committee is the one to make the recommendation as to the layout of the field and what sports activities will be there. Again, it's a recommendation to the board. all these committees are making recommendations. The board, 5 people up here want to make a final recommendation. He's not on the field.
What committees are you on, sir?
I'm not even on a committee.
He's the only board member not on the committee.
But does he have input to the other boards at all?
He's part of the Board of Education.
That's what I'm saying, you would
Well,
take a final vote.
I'll save you the Google time.
Thank you,
I
sir.
have 3 daughters.
Mhm.
One is in college, the other one's in high school, she plays soccer, and she does marching band. By that definition, I should do what? Refuse
No,
myself?
if you have a
because-
child in school, I can understand, I have children in
I don't
school.
think there's a greater vested interest in anything than in your own children, so.
Oh, believe it,
So-
I take you, word
So-
a parent, not as a
If
noun,
we
but a
went around
verb.
this table, every one of us has a
I
vested interest.
coach
in
soccer,
the field.
my daughter plays
What do we
soccer,
have?
my son plays soccer in the cross, so.
I do too. I coach 3 teams.
Okay,
So-
so is that.
So
is that
we're
affect my
all investing in
judgment?
our children. What we're here for is for where our children live. We don't want our investments in our houses to go downhill.
And if I could summarize your point, right, so I'm not going to debate with you, right?
No,
So
please,
you have an
I
opinion, I
appreciate
got your
your opinion.
opinion, I gave you an opinion back, you heard my opinion,
Yes,
and I
sir.
think that's the end. So the concern that you have is on lighting the lower field. If we made turf down there and put a fence around it and ran around it all daylight hours, no problem.
You could line it with gold,
Got
as
it.
long as you don't put lights up.
Got your message, thank you very much.
And back up 1 second, you don't find any conflict of interest in that
I don't.
at all?
No.
Okay.
Same way I'm on the Board of Education. Look, one of the things that you challenge on the Board of Education is, even when we propose the budget, if I told you it was a good budget, there's only so far I can go. I can't tell you legally, I think you should vote yes. That's a law, right?
What
But
I
if
don't
I work all
understand is-
year on a budget, I think it's a pretty good budget, and I think you should vote yes. But, so you put there's conflicts of interest that are in law like that, there's conflicts of interest that are in usage. So I have children that I use the field, I'm on the Board of Education, and somebody would argue, well, because you're on the Board of Education, you want to destroy the neighborhood. That's not true. I think it's the exact opposite for the great pay and personal satisfaction you get from being up here week after week.
Great hours, right?
Great hours. The hours are terrific. About 5 of them, I'll be back at work again. So I don't see I don't see a conflict.
What piqued my interest was, every time we came up speaking with Mr. Spardell, he's putting lights on the downfield to play baseball.
So he asked if he would recuse himself from the committee. He's not on any of the.
Well, recuse himself from the decision factor of what goes on the
I think
field.
he's on the Board of Education.
Well, why is that the meeting with us talking about with the town? Like, if he's not on any committees involved in that decision, why was he the only person here?
Well, if we can back up a minute, you reached out to me, your group, and wanted me to sit down with the town, and I refused the meeting due to the fact that the town is not, dictating us on how we're gonna proceed here. So, like I said to your group, I would bring, this is exactly what I said to Ms. Borchese, I would bring it to the Board of Education, if any of them would like to sit on that, they would do it. Mr. Spardell volunteered to sit on that committee, so that's where that came from.
Yeah,
Right now.
just to compliment that, Steve, the meeting was requested from, it's my understanding, okay, so this was, because I learned about this secondhand and later, it wasn't our meeting, so the meeting was requested, as far as I understand, by representatives, I think it was Mrs. Borchese, requested a meeting with Mr. Held to discuss engineering issues, right? And the town council, or through Mr. Martin and Mr. Held, refused to meet with Mrs. Borchese unless there would be a Board of Education member there. Because it makes sense, like why would the town be talking about a Board of Education project? So if you're seeking Mr. Held's engineering guidance, by all means, I think that's a good idea. We've done it ourselves. We met with Mr. Held to ask him, and we invited our engineering firm to meet with Mr. Held to see, okay, what do you think, Jen? What do you think about our project, right? Have we made any mistakes? What are your concerns? And he laid them all out, and we went forward. So that meeting was then, would not have happened with the town cap, with Mr. Martin or Mr. Held, had someone from the Board of Education not gone. The meeting would not have happened. So I said, I'll be happy to go represent the Board of Education at that meeting.
So you were just there as a board member, not as bringing any
No.
information back to any committees or anything?
No, because the agenda for the meeting was my understanding was that you wanted to talk to Mr. Hell about engineering concerns, so the pipe, the fill in the southeast corner, the sprinkler system, the irrigation system, the environmental impact, the remediation, the soil, any potential contamination, any civil engineering impacts. You were there, right? We talked about it in the meeting. So I was there because that was the only way you were going to get that meeting. So I said, okay, I'll be happy to do that. I just asked that we not talk about the lights because it's not the lights are not part of even my decision making individually. That's why I said in context, I hope we get lights there because I think it's the right thing for the project. That's my personal opinion. But the decision about the lights is in the committee. That's why I encourage you to continue to talk to that committee, because if you want to kill the lights, you got to get it through that committee, because that committee then bubbles up their recommendation to the Board of Education.
We did today.
I'm going to go back to what I said about a half hour ago, is that the referendum says a turf field, a light and turf on a lower field. That's what the referendum said, in plain English. So for the committee, I don't see how the committee is going to overturn what the public referendum said.
From what I'm told,
I'm not an
you can
attorney.
do less, you just can't do more.
I'm sorry?
You can do less on a referendum, you just can't do more.
It said, the voters voted and approved turf field, turf and lights on the lower field. That's what they approved. You can always do less, but that's what we promised. That's what we put into the referendum, that's what the voters voted for. So I don't see how the committee is going to overturn what we said we were going to do. I
understand that, but with that thinking, why would we have a committee?
To make a recommendation. The recommendation, there's no recommendation. The language of the referendum states what the project is supposed to be.
If the referendum's, I'm sorry, stop it, if the referendum's in stone, then why are we having committee meetings?
There are design options.
So there's still wiggle room, so to speak.
About the design. At the end of the day, the only thing that's gonna matter, quite frankly, is when the lights are on and when the lights are off. And in order to get to that answer, we've got Gary Felician, the athletic director, Jim Cunningham, rec department, building what the schedule may look like. Given all the programs that exist today, and assuming that the Hilltop field is not there.
No night baseball, is what you're saying.
Well, the plan that we have today, the plan that we have from our engineers, has no provision for lights for the baseball field, different configuration of lights.
It would not allow, the current budget and the current plan would not allow us to play night baseball because we didn't, again, my personal view, this is me, Steve Scardell, we made a mistake. We didn't put enough in there to allow night baseball. So that's good for you guys. Good for you. Right now we can't afford it because it would cost twice as much.
In the budget, is there any overrun costs in the budget? Like you said, you couldn't afford any
Contingencies.
Yeah, there are contingencies.
Is that based on percentage or
Yes.
on line items?
10%. It's 10% of the total budget. Rough. So it's about $400,000. What's in contingency fees, and we have another $450,000 or so in engineering fees. So, no, the contractor's got to get paid. So he's got. I sent you guys the information. You have the quotation. You have a detailed quotation that I sent out. Anybody asks, I'm happy to send the information. I don't have it here though. But there's a contingency of, and it just came as a percentage of the project. So it's about $400,000.
So I thought at our meeting, $1 million, 1 point something was held for not earmarked for anything. So you could do a bunch more lights. And you didn't factor it that way. You did say about $1 million.
It's the numbers you're talking about.
$400,000 for the contingency on the field.
On the field.
And then more someplace else.
Well, then the upper field, there's big debates. There's a big debate going on as to whether or not we are have. I mean, this is where I'm getting into a lot of minutia. I'm happy to do it. I don't know if this is the right forum. I'll let the board decide that. And I'm glad that it's public now, because obviously I think you're not responsible with what I try to do to help communicate information to you. So here's what the genesis of Mr. Frizzy's ideas is that we had a plan or a budget of $1.8 million to do the upper field remediation and the tennis courts, right? So we budget, and that was born out of a licensed site remediation professional at the engineering firm said, in order for you to comply and to get approved from the Department of Environmental Protection, you have to do this work. And then we said, wow, really, all that work? And he said, if you want my blessing, you have to do this work. And then then we took that to their budget, their estimators, and said, how much is this going to cost us? Your guy is telling us we have to do all this work. And they said, oh, well, if you have to do that, I mean, he's Dudley. Whatever Dudley says, we got to do. So he said, that's going to cost $1.8 million. And when we looked at their original work that they did, we said, yeah, but if you put them two together, if you analyze it logically, this should only cost $500,000 with the tennis courts, or maybe $700,000. So why are we spending an extra $1 million? Dudley says. That's where, so now we're going to go back, now we have everything, so I think Mr. Forte did the prudent thing, because I argued, probably imprudently, the heck with that. Let's just go with, let's make sure that we get this thing passed. Let's not throw in everything with the kitchen sink. He said, let's do worst case. Turned out, I think he was right. So now we have the worst case scenario. We have $1.8 million. And then Mr. Frizzy comes in and says, wait a minute, I could save you $1 million, right? If you did it my way, or this way. Here's some ideas, right? And I even mischaracterized it. It wasn't my way, but Rudy was just trying to give the committee some ideas. And then, to his chagrin, those ideas were then carried out through the community as the Frizzy plan. I talked to him personally, right? And you talked to him as well. He's like, that was not the intent. The intent was to just stimulate some thoughts with his expertise. So we're evaluating those.
Fall on your mind? Like, do you disagree with him wholeheartedly?
Mr. Frizzy?
Yeah. For like the moving up to the top field and saving money, using the established bathrooms and snack rooms here, rather than have to rebuild the whole thing over again down the hill? Did you agree with anything he said?
That's a good question. His ideas, though, are they have to be taken. They're just ideas taken within the context of, if it will work. Like, have you thought about eliminating the retaining wall for $400,000 and just putting in a layered, compacted earthwork, if you will, right? So you said that'll save hundreds of thousands, right? If you didn't turf half the lower field, right? That was another idea. You could come up with lots of ideas that we could save $3 million by not doing it at all, right? We could save.
From what I've read, I didn't see anything about half turfing the lower field at all. From what we spoke of today, even with the lights, saving license, 75,000 a pole.
About 75,000 poles.
Right. Right now in the budget, we got 6 poles. Right. And there's not enough lumens, not enough foot candles coming out of those mercury galactic light bulbs to play night baseball. Right. Again, to my chagrin. Right. It's too bad. So that's the. So if we didn't do but to what we talked about in our meeting was Mr. Frizzy said, wait a minute, I think here's some ideas on how you can recover more for less money. And it didn't take a lot for Joe and I to decide when the administration said, so Steve and Joe, what do you think? Should we do more for less money? We're not the brightest bulbs, but we said, that's a good idea, go ahead. So now the engineers are evaluating Mr. Frizzy's ideas and what else they can do. They're talking to Dudley, saying, Dudley, do we really have to take out, I don't know, 1,000 cubic yards of dirt, chop it all up into little pieces and then put it back? Or do we really have to do that? And if Dudley says yes, then maybe we have to do it. So, but there's potentially $1 million to play with. So, go talk to the committee. If the committee says, let's put night baseball in there, I'm in, right? But you have to talk to them. That's not my committee, not my job.
The other question I have is, in the referendum, it said we were going to put an addition on a high school for the music room. I think this board has the right to say, well, you know what, we have the money now, let's skip that. Let's put on a new cafeteria on that ground. You think that's a reasonable thing for us to do?
To answer that question, if that music room interfered with somebody, say, let's say, living next door, somebody had it.
No, I'm just asking.
As long as you provided it, you're providing what's in the referendum. We're just saying move it back up the hill, move it back up to where it belongs. You could move that top field over 30, 35 yards towards Sampson. Only need 4 poles, not 6, not 8, not 12, or whatever it's going to wind up it to be. That's savings alone.
Well,
There's got to be savings in restrooms, facilities, snack bars, parking. There's going to be tons of savings. And then everybody walks away happy. There's nobody complained about the night games before, I'm sure. When you had the rented lights, it was a happy neighborhood. But now moving it down, like you said before, the lights are the incubus, basically. That's kind of what we're looking to not live with. Any questions? Thank you all.
Before we get our next comment, I'd like to make just 3 quick comments. One is, there have been some comments made by the public that are saying come across as fact, but are really not facts. So that was one thing I concur with the board members are saying. I'd also like to concur with 2 things that Mr. Spardell said. Number one is that there are comments being taken out of context all around here. I understand that. And the second thing is, 100% Steve Spardell, you were a strong advocate and pushed for these committees. And I mean, that's just fact. I want to just make sure everyone understands that. Mr. Spardell drove me to create some of these committees, and a lot of it had to do with your ideas and what you thought. So 100% I agree with you.
In that same vein, not looking to put in anyone else's fight or anyone else's battle for all adults here, but I would like to share that there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. I'm not quite sure we're quite thinking the right way on the, I would call, feeling, the language, the tone of our, and I'd like us all to, whether it's now, whether it's when you go home tonight, just take pause and evaluate what Mr. Forte just said, what I just said, and see if we can take this good conversation, being kind with those words, and make it great. That's the goal, right? To make it great. And not only get best project and best plot, but to have the best outcome because of the collaboration that we're having. Mr. Spardell is an advocate for every member of this community. And I'll go beyond just saying whether it's those who voted yes or no, either member or whatever it might be, as is every member of this board. And we are all appreciative, myself included, of the time that you've taken and you've put into our meeting. We can't accomplish anything that we want to do without you, whether it's being voted onto the board or going ahead and making a decision as a board. And we all understand that.
Good evening. My name is Brashi. I'm at 22 Double Terrace, and I've lived in this town and that one for 26 years, and I fully understand what it is to live in this neighborhood near the high school and near the fields. And when my husband and I bought this house, we embrace living here. And we embrace all that Verona High School has been. The fireworks, the football games, the Thanksgiving football game, everything that other people may think is so terrible to live around. But we've embraced it, we've enjoyed it, we've supported everything. And although all those activities create congestion and noise and no parking on Dog Terrace, which causes terrible danger all the time, I never really considered it detrimental to my life until now. And it's really upsetting that these changes will be taking place because it really will affect the quality of my life, of all of our lives, of anybody who lives in this neighborhood, as well as our property values plummeting. None of us wants to see that happen. It appears that the board is considerate of the neighbors, and we just want to be heard. We want you to know how important it is to us to live here and how much we all love it. My son is a graduate this year of the high school. All three of my children have done well academically. All three have played sports, varsity all 4 years. I love it here. I want to stay here. I'm thinking about moving because of this. I don't want to move, and I feel like I'm being forced out. My neighbor of 60 years sold his house. He's out because we can't even fight this fight. I fought this fight years ago with the lights on the upper field, and now all the talk about the lights on the lower field, I'm thinking, you know what? I think that the field should be lit up on the top field, and I'm willing to live with that. And it's in my backyard because my house is the second house off of the corner of Sampson, so my backyard has the tennis lights in it all the time. And I've learned to live with that. Again, a hazard of living by the high school. But this is just asking too much of us. It really is. And I hear Mr. Bellino, you keep saying it's pretty much a done deal. It's the field, it's the lights. But these 110-foot lights will have such a terrible impact. And it's unfathomable. And I just believe that there is a better way to do it. And I hope that you hear us. And I hope that you consider everything that everybody has said here tonight. And at one of the last meetings that Mr. Forte did have with some of the board members, where Mr. Frisian and Mr.
Lynch.
Mr. Lynch were present. Mr. Frisian did make a statement that he would like to see only varsity sports played on the fields. And with the 2 new fields being built on Hilltop with lights, I hope that you all consider that as well. Because we don't want to see all the other sports organizations in town playing on these fields. We want it limited to the Verona High School varsity teams. And with other teams, the 2 new Hilltop fields, we feel there's now enough fields with lights that we don't need to support those other organizations.
Ms. Washington, so I'll give you an example of why I feel so strongly about getting the schedule. In the fall, the only sports that we play at Verona High School are soccer and football. Today, soccer doesn't use any of our high school property. We use some temporary for games and practices. And soccer practices right after school. So the other community teams practice after soccer is done. So that actually, desire is to have the high school teams practice and play at the high school fields wherever possible. When soccer is not using Centennial, somebody else will. Right? When soccer is done, right after, so we don't have kids, we don't have students leave the school, go home, and then come back to begin practice at 6 o'clock in the practice because of the coaching schedules and everything else. Practice is predominantly an after-school event. Right? And it would be rare to have kids go home after school and then come back to the school and then go play games. That sort of thing. They're usually right after school events. The community groups are the ones that that go on tonight because the younger kids go home, do homework, and then everybody come back. The latest that any soccer, youth soccer, starts a practice is about 8 o'clock today. I'll go back to what I said before, in a world of 2 fields. In a world of 5 fields, it just strikes me as it would be very unexpected in my mind, mathematically, to go from 2 fields to 5, and somehow have to burn the lights brighter and later at night as a result of that. So I think once we have a schedule, we can take a look at, it would be nice and open, everybody would be to the field committee, everyone would look at the same thing, understand what the commitment is, that should fit into the policy Mr. Forte talked about before, that the board is ready to sign, and put it to the vote. That's,
I hope so. And you know, the only reason we bring this up is because we, I can only speak for myself, I know many of these people who were in charge of these other organized sports, and they were big proponents of this referendum. So it only makes sense to me that if you're such a proponent of something, it's because you have something to gain. And that's why we keep bringing it up, because that's our concern.
I've coached 6 years of softball and soccer. And I can tell you, as a coach, the most difficult thing to deal with are muddy fields that you can't play on and reschedule games.
I know
The beauty of a turf field is, you know, that will happen a lot less. But the goal of any coach is not to be out coaching kids. As much as coaching is a great thing to do, please don't take this the wrong way. I can assure you, most folks that I know that coach would rather not leave the house at 7 o'clock at night in the middle of dinner time, and okay, kids are homework and they'll coach at night. It's an afternoon sort of thing. So I think once, and then in the spring, the 2 sports that we play are only baseball and lacrosse. And today, lacrosse uses synthetic. Right? So the goal would be, as we build capacity, to bring those high school teams back right after school, so they can practice right after school, right outside the building, and play games. But I think once we get it scheduled, it'll be very, very clear what the expectations are and what to the lights. Anybody else?
One other comment.
Sure.
It's kind of related. I told you where I live, and baseball's in season. And one of the big problems that I have is referees. The referees get undressed in front of our houses. Umpires. Pardon me.
I'm sorry,
Right on Samson,
Because they always park in front of my house. Now, I have a daughter, when she was young, I used to go outside, and they would be in their boxers and their t-shirts, and I'd go up to them and say, you know, I have a young girl in the house, can you please get dressed before you come to the game? And they would laugh. But last week, I had to get somebody's face again, because he did the same thing. He was, you know, down to his boxers. So how can I address that?
Well, consider it addressed, because you just did, right? So we'll turn it over to you, and get Mr. Frisch, get a hold of the
But I don't know if I should
Are
go back to
they
Mr. Frazier.
umpires that are coming to a high school game or
They're
something
going to
other
the
than
high school games. No, it's to the
Sunday
high
morning.
school game.
Sunday morning time. Sunday
Oh,
mornings
yeah.
too.
Oh,
That's
okay.
not the high school.
Oh,
Sunday
okay.
mornings, that's my crowd.
Yeah, okay.
I know who to talk to.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Don't change on the street. We're gonna actually do that. It's okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Mr. Quattrochi, I think you just made a very great argument for the fact that the need for the lights on the lower field may not be exactly what you guys want it to be.
No, that's not what I said.
Well-
What I said was that the need to run the lights on the number of days per week, and to the hours of a day, and the number of months a year, is not what I think people are feeling.
Right, based on the 2 upper fields coming online,
The upper.
the hilltop fields.
Well, there'll be 1 field up there, and
Right.
and then 2 on the lower field.
Right, well,
And the reason for that is because at the lower field, you'll have two multi-purpose fields. So you could have, for example, if it was a day that soccer was practicing, both soccer teams could be on there at the same time, as opposed to, you have 1 field, so another.
Right.
Or you could have football practicing on the one side and soccer on the other side, that's all.
But, and I think that, I think the overall perception is that, once the hilltop field goes online, that there's gonna be less of a demand
on current fields that we have, and a lot of that stuff's gonna go.
There's no question.
Okay.
If you have 2 fields and you make 3, you'll have less than that.
Okay. All right, so I agree with that. And with that said, then I would say, then, you know, maybe there should have been a little bit more due diligence in regards to, you know, the total need for the lighted field that you propose in this project. You know, let's say, for example, this project wasn't coming to fruition for another 2 years, 1 year after the hilltop fields were completed. Then one might say, you know, based on the current information that we have, and the fact that the field is online, the need for the lighted fields at the proposed lower field are not necessary. And in that regard, I would say, and I've heard other communities do this, although if you ask me which ones, I couldn't reference them, but I know that in some respects, projects like this, what they'll do is they'll run the piping for the lights. And maybe even put the footings in for the lights, but not erect the lights until they determine whether or not they actually need them. Because I think that in totality, there are probably very limited times when you really want to put those lights on anyway for the school activities that we're discussing. But beyond that, you know, when you have other sports clubs and I guess men's leagues and things like that that may want to play on, I think that's when it comes into play. We're talking about the later hours and the problems.
It's not up to any men's league on when the lights are, it's only up to the Board of Education.
Right, but what our concern is as a community is that, you know, those fields could quite possibly be used for those things in later hours. And it might be outside the realm of the Board of Education's purpose, but the fact of the matter is it's there, it may be there to be used, and somebody might determine that that's what we want to do with it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, look, as much as a future board can change what this board does, future residents can change their mind on whether they're for or against lights.
Okay.
So
But again, major concerns that we have. I'm sure that, you know, you've all listened to several of the residents that came up here tonight and, you know, revealed to you what their sentiments are in reference to what's going on with this project. And, you know, sitting in the gallery, there were several things that, you know, I made notes on, and some of them I just want to bring to bear, you know, because it was discussed here tonight. You know, things like environmental testing, and consultation, and budgets, and surveys, and engineering information. And I would say that that is the essence of a great project. But one thing I think that all of this is missing is the impact it has on the surrounding area that it's going to affect, which is all of our neighborhood. Now, I know that these things mentioned here tonight are some of the items that are in process. And Mr. Bellino made reference to the board in town field, and you said that it was a concept, kind of dropped it in, you know, in the Verona lower field, because this is what we're trying to accomplish. But what I would like to know from the members of the board is if anybody took note on what surrounds that board in town field. Can anybody tell me?
I will definitely share a thought. When we were deciding on upper and lower and budgets and everything in the beginning, and during the meeting with the town, I was definitely a proponent, and I shared it at the meeting, I shared it in public at one point, of developing Hilltop and seeing what the need was here at the high school. Now, this is obviously why I'm under the bridge. What that lacked, though, for me was, you know, putting my head on the pillow at night, right, for the referendum, and deciding that we're going to do the project as is, and realizing the full impact on everyone else's head on a pillow in those 50 houses, right? But that thought wasn't the what if and the poem that ran through my head, right? Maybe I should read more poetry at night, who knows? But so I think there is an element of that. Which then takes me back to, I appreciate your calm and very present and very respectful tone as you're up here, because I don't think any of us, I don't know if being penalized for that is going to get the outcome that we want, right? So I do appreciate you being very respectful here right now too. And I'm not saying you were before, but I just think that we want to take and, you know, using of conflict of interest and everything that tends to be a little bit like tense. So do appreciate that. But yeah, that's just my own personal journey as to I think how we got here and how I felt about the project as it was coming to fruition. But I'm glad now that I understand the what ifs that are running through everyone's head in those 50 houses. That's really important because at the end of the day, this is decision time, right? As we move
Well, absolutely, and, you know, back to my question, does anybody on the board remember what the perimeter of the board and town field looked like in relation to the neighborhood?
Oh, I'm sorry, because it's, we have like a 5-minute sort of limit to this
Okay.
everything, right? So if you have a comment or suggestion to make, be glad to hear it. If you have a direct question, we can answer it. We're not here
I can do that,
What we don't want
absolutely.
to do is get into a sort of a public Board of Education debate. I think we made clear what our position is on the thing. I think we've made clear what we're intending, the steps that we're intending to do and what we are doing. We've made clear that we've got a committee structure in place that welcomes representatives from around the neighboring community. And we're going to plot on ahead in order to determine what's best for all involved.
Okay, I agree, and what I'm trying to point out is the fact that, again, maybe you wanted to use that particular field as a concept design for the purposes in the lower field.
So this topic has come up a number of times. So the way a project is engineered in a school system is different than how a township.
And I fully
So-
understand.
No, I don't think everyone does. So what happens in the Board of Education, given that the funds are not appropriated or raised, debt is not issued the way the township does to pay for the engineering and the rest. So the way a Board of Education has to go about doing it is you provision a de minimis amount of money relative to what the total is to get the engineering firm who is state sanctioned and have to follow state guidelines for schools to do the conceptual engineering only. So the diagrams that folks have said, you never did specifications, you haven't done the design yet, you didn't do, that's 100% correct. When you're a Board of Education, the only funding that you appropriate ahead of time is to do the conceptual design. From the conceptual design, the one-page diagram, the engineers then use reference tables, which they have to use on the cost of manpower, the cost of material, and they estimate. And then they build in their contingencies, also following state guidelines. Once that's done, that gets packaged up and has to be approved by the Department of Ed in order to be put on a ballot. It's got to be in proper form, it's got to meet all the state standards, the numbers have to add up the way the state wants to see them added up, it's got to be formatted in a certain way, etc. That's what they've done. Once they do that, it goes to public vote. That's the referendum vote. Simple majority vote. Referendum passes. At that point, in that referendum, is the money to pay for the engineering design work, which tonight we tabled Myla to the next meeting. In the last meeting, we approved FPA to do the engineering for the lower field, to get that going as quick as possible so we can put an end to some of this. Right?
And I understand all of that.
So when it comes to you've got a one-page conceptual drawing, and you didn't do this, and we haven't done it. It's 100% correct. But on purpose, we haven't done it. That's not, the process here is not the same as what the.
Oh, I understand everything that you just said.
Yeah, except when people say to me, you never did this, you never did that, and if you worked for the town, you would have done it. That's not true.
Okay. Well, more to my point, and I imagine that your explanation is more for someone in the gallery who doesn't understand that process, but
My explanation is for anyone
I
who's
fully
willing to
do.
listen.
I fully do, but my point being is this, okay? And I hate to use the old adage, didn't see the forest for the trees, but when you looked at that field, and you didn't see any neighborhoods around
The
it.
Board and Town diagram?
Yeah.
I can tell you what I looked at. I looked at the Verona field. The Board and Town diagram was simply an illustration that said, in the acreage that you have in the lower field, it would look like this and how you would paint it.
Right, but at some point, somebody looked past that. I mean, you had to.
I didn't look past
Okay,
it.
because when I saw the rendering, the picture, okay, I could also see what was surrounding the field, and what's surrounding the field are parking lots, green acres
I'm sure there's fine
and
people.
fields.
I'm sure there's fine people in Board and Town, Mr. DePalma.
Oh, absolutely.
I personally don't care what they do with that field.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, and it didn't cost you anything. This is when you looked at a rendition or a possible concept,
of what you thought you were gonna do
I
with
need
the
to,
lower
I'm sorry, I
field.
just need to, so we'll go past it. If you have a question about what the Board of Education.
Well, I think it was I think what my question is, when you saw that it was apparent that this project was gonna go in a developed neighborhood and completely
No, we didn't have to go figure that out. The town of Verona is a developed neighborhood. I don't think
Okay.
there's any board-in-town looking area in all of Verona. So I think if you question.
Well, I
is,
think you understand what
board-in-town
you understand what
diagram
I'm
and
trying to
say, geez, how much
say.
is this like Verona? I think the answer is no. We look at just Verona.
Right. If you would indulge me for a
I
minute,
drive
so
up,
I
I
can
drive up
finish.
Sampson every time I come to the school, and there's
Okay.
a boatload of houses that I pass on every
Well,
side.
look, I'm just saying this, okay, that if I was involved in a process where I had to take something, okay, and transplant an image somewhere else, okay, I'd also want to be concerned what was around that something, and I'm sure that everybody here saw what was around that Bordentown field, and there are no neighborhoods around that Bordentown field. So what I'm saying, and my point is that there's no way that the township or the Board of Education can take a project like that and transplant it into the neighborhood like they want to without there being an impact on the neighborhood,
Okay, thank you very much.
okay?
Anybody else?
Yes.
Barbara Bochis, 9 Dodd Terrace. First, I want to thank Joe and Jim and Michael for meeting with us, for meeting with me, for taking the time to hear what we have to say, what our concerns are. We truly do appreciate that. Mr. Spardell, thank you very much for meeting us at the BOE as a BOE member, and meeting with us when we met with Mr. Hill and Mr. Martin. We did ask to meet. And the reason we asked is we have a lot of questions. We're not just neighbors. We're not. We're trying very hard to figure out what's happening here, what's happening to us. And to some people, we may only be 50 homes. And if we've taken that out of context, the curtness and the pain that causes us is great. And you'll have to forgive us if we may, to your opinion, overreact. But we are here, standing here, fighting for what we believe we're entitled to. Nothing more and nothing less. And the fact that you've listened to all of these people that have come here tonight, and this is just a few of us. We may only be 50 people or 50 homes, but and there may be 5,000 other people in this town, but we 50 people should be much more important to you, because we live right next to that field. So if you'll indulge me with just a couple of minutes, I think I get, 4 or 5? These good people, one by one, have stood up here before you, and they've spoken from their hearts and presented to you over and over again their concerns for this lower field major development project. If indeed your job as a board member is, and I quote from the State Ethics Charter, to ensure and preserve public confidence and to confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal. And I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. Then your actions tonight cannot be indifferent. Your actions must be, and it has to take into consideration these 50 people, as much as you are concerned about the referendum and your job to that, and I know that that's important. We are not saying to you, the BGA has always accepted the intent of the referendum as it relates to the need for field remediation and improvement, but the lack of any consideration for the neighbors and the neighborhoods only compels us to continue to get louder and fight and be more emotional. How can we not? That is what is right and just to us. We have presented you with valid concerns, and we have offered you options. A referendum proposal that has no conclusive environmental impact or feasibility studies done, whether they were done before, they need to be done now. We need to have them done, but we would have hoped you would have done something prior to putting pen to paper. So to us, it's ill-conceived, whether you agree with that or not. We have nothing to base it on. But you stand here and you say to us, it's not done yet, but you have a plan.
and you have an idea, and your concept, you're moving forward on it. So we need you to hear us. But we talk about and we feel that there's a great indifference to the good neighbors. So I'm going to just quote from Elie Wiesel. He says, "What is indifference? The word means no difference, a strange and unnatural state in which the lines blur between light and darkness, dusk and dawn, crime and punishment, cruelty and compassion, good and evil. Of course, indifference can be tempting, more than that, seductive. It is so much easier to look away from victims. It is so much easier to avoid such rude interruptions to our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward, troublesome, to be involved in another person's pain and despair. Yet for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbor is of no consequence, and therefore their lives are meaningless. Their hidden or invisible anguish is of no interest. Indifference reduces the other to an abstraction. In a way, to be indifferent to that suffering is what makes the human being inhuman. Indifference, after all, is more dangerous than anger and hatred. Anger can at times be creative. One writes a great poem, a great symphony. One does something special for the sake of humanity because one is angry at the injustice that one witnesses. But indifference is never creative. Even hatred at times may elicit a response. You fight it, you denounce it, you disarm it. Indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning, it is an end. And therefore, indifference is always the friend of the enemy, for it benefits the aggressor, never his victim whose pain is magnified when he or she feels forgotten. The political prisoner in his cell, the hungry children, the homeless refugees, not to respond to their plight, not to relieve their solitude by offering them a spark of hope, is to exile them from human memory. And in denying their humanity, we betray our own. Indifference, then, is not only a sin, it is a punishment. So the BGNA will continue to fight for what is our right, even in the face of what we think is indifference. Thank you.
You're versed in who he is?
I know exactly who he is, Mr. Spargo.
You know who he is.
So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If the definition of indifference is every board member is met, some board members a number of times, had meetings with the town. We've given you as much voice at public meetings as possible. If that's and I think we're trying to constructively get to a place where we can demonstrate how the fields are used, trying to get that into fact so we can put it into a policy as quick as possible. But I don't know that that's the definition of indifference, so we would disagree on that.
That's fine.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much. Our next board meeting is on the, actually this is wrong, it's the 28th. It's May 13th at 7 p.m. We have a confidential session with a public session afterwards.